Chapter 341. Under the urging of the three women, the five dragons' binding seal's effect was much stronger than before. After all, Lungshan's strength wasn't low, and the Hu sisters were even more powerful when they joined forces. The three treasure instrument sect disciples couldn't compare to them. 5 dragons appeared, each of them spitting out a white light towards the soul-type evil spirit. The soul-type evil spirit was once again bound in place. Knowing that the 5 dragons' binding seal wouldn't be able to bind it for long, Yang Kai no longer showed any mercy. Pushing out his palms, Yang Kai sent out his white tiger seal and divine ox seal, the 2 true Yang Yuan Qi beast phantoms viciously tearing at each other. With one hand holding his sword, Yang Kai sent out his burning sun's 3-layer blast towards the soul-type evil spirit. Yang Kai was completely ignoring the soul attacks it was sending out. Everyone watching this scene couldn't help feeling their cheeks twitch. This kind of fighting style was really too violent, giving people the feeling that he was willing to sacrifice himself to take the enemy down with him. The soul-type evil spirit's body was rapidly fading, but the soul skills it displayed were still visible to the naked eye as they rushed into Yang Kai's mind one after another. The reason why an Yuan Qi cultivator would be helpless against a soul-type evil spirit was because they couldn't defend against its soul skills. Even an immortal Ascension Boundary Master would struggle to avoid these attacks, so soul-type evil spirits had always been very troublesome to deal with inside the evil cavern. However, if one could ignore its soul attacks, it would only be slightly stronger than an average evil spirit. The pain in Yang Kai's mind grew more and more intense, causing the blue veins on his forehead to bulge, but his hands didn't stop moving, constantly wearing down the soul-type evil spirit's body as it let out a sharp howl. The old man on the other side watched for a while, and his eyes, which were overflowing with light, trembled slightly. He hadn't expected Yang Kai to be so strong. This Yuan Qi 5th stage young man's strength and combat effectiveness had far exceeded his expectations. If this continued, he really would be able to kill this soul-type evil spirit, and it wouldn't take too long. Thinking so, the old man quietly shifted his attention to Yang Kai's side. Sure enough, after fighting for half a cup of tea's time, the soul-type evil spirit let out a series of howls. His body turned into specks of purple light before disappearing. Seeing Yang Kai's display of power, the Ghost King Valley and Treasure Instrument sect disciples couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief. The Hu sisters even covered their mouths in surprise, their eyes trembling. Where the soul-type evil spirit had disappeared, it left behind a large cluster of pure white, cotton-like evil spirit essence. Inside this cluster of evil spirit essence, there were threads visible to the naked eye. Before the crowd had time to feel happy for Yang Kai, a voice suddenly rang out. After seeing this ball of origin, they all exclaimed, "Special origin." The old man's eyes, which were already overflowing with light, suddenly glowed even more brightly as he stared greedily at them. A special evil spirit essence was much more precious than an ordinary evil spirit essence. No one knew what kind of mysteries were hidden inside. However, when the old man looked at this special origin, he clearly felt that his divine sense was being slightly attracted, as if it was a cat that had smelled blood. His instinctive desire had been aroused. In an instant, the old man understood that this special origin source was an origin source that could increase the power of his divine sense. After all, this was something left behind by the soul-type evil spirit after its death, so it was only natural that it could increase one's spiritual energy. Suddenly, the old man's greed soared. If it was an ordinary origin, the old man wouldn't have been tempted, but something that could increase one's spiritual energy was rare, so it was worth the risk of snatching it. There was no hesitation at all. The old man hurriedly shouted to Yu Qing, "Stand guard." In the next moment, his figure shot out like a meteor towards Yang Kai. "Shameless old dog!" Shunyi shouted angrily. "Yang Kai, be careful!" Everyone shouted. Yang Kai was dizzy and on the verge of collapsing. Although he had the help of the soul-warming lotus, after so many soul attacks, he had also suffered a lot of damage. After killing the soul-type evil spirit, he didn't even bother to check what kind of origin it had left behind. Instead, he simply took a drop of myriad drug liquid from the black book space and swallowed it. With a cry of alarm, Yang Kai instinctively pushed his Yuan Qi and grabbed the evil spirit essence in front of him, circulating his secret art and absorbing it into his palm. Courting death. The old man had no scruples at this moment. Since he had already shed all pretense of cordiality with Yang Kai, there was no need for him to pretend to be a good person. A look of pain and anger appeared on the old man's face as he viciously struck out towards Yang Kai. An angry blow from an immortal ascension boundary 5th stage master. Even if Yang Kai tried his best to resist, he still couldn't withstand it. He only had time to squeeze out a drop of Yang liquid and turn it into a shield above his head. Peng. With a loud bang, Yang Kai was struck by the old man and fell directly into the slowly rising evil spirit spring, disappearing from sight. The old man was stunned mid-air, muttering a few curses under his breath before sighing and turning around to return. He still did not have the time to snatch that special evil spirit origin. Yang Kai. Humayer's beautiful face suddenly went pale, as if she had lost her soul. Without the slightest hesitation, she directly jumped off the high platform and fell towards the spot where Yang Kai had fallen. But after falling only a foot, her body was caught. She turned around and saw her sister shaking her head at her in a panic. "Let me go." Humayer looked at her elder sister pleadingly and muttered. Hu Jiao still shook her head, her eyes gradually becoming red. Since cultivating the twin chi shared spirit divine art, the two sisters had gradually become one, so how could Hu Jiao not feel the grief and panic in her sister's heart at this moment? Because of this, Hu Jiao's heart also ached. But even more so, she couldn't watch her younger sister jump down to her death. The high platform was silent as the Ghost King Valley and Treasure Instrument sect disciples were all stunned. None of them had expected this old man to be so despicable and shameless. A moment later, Lung Shan suddenly screamed, "Attack!" Turning her head, her beautiful eyes filled with unparalleled anger and madness, she raised her hand and sent out her Ghost King seal. The Ghost King seal let out a sharp howl and fiercely attacked the other side of the high platform. As soon as she took action, all the Ghost King Valley disciples also used their martial skills, while the Treasure Instrument sect disciples also hurriedly summoned their artifacts and attacked the old man and the free and unfettered sect disciples. While trying not to damage the true Yang Yuan Chi's defensive shield, everyone vented the anger in their hearts. The other side of the high platform was already surrounded on all sides, and with the Ghost King Valley and Treasure Instrument sect disciples attacking it, the situation became even more precarious. Yu Qing's expression changed greatly as he panicked and shouted, "Lung Shan, you even dare attack my free and unfettered sect disciples? Free and unfettered sect and Ghost King Valley are close neighbors, and besides, we didn't attack that little brat, don't be so indiscriminate." Lung Shan's eyes flashed a cold light as she sneered, completely ignoring Yu Qing's shouts and continuing to squander her Yuan Qi. "Impudent junior!" The old man flew into a rage. He realized that he had underestimated this group of young people. In their anger, their attacks were all very sharp. He didn't care about one or two attacks, but with so many people attacking at the same time, coupled with the surrounding evil spirits, the old man was suddenly a little flustered. He was at his wits' end. In particular, the several artifacts that were summoned were incredibly powerful, causing the old man's complexion to change greatly. "If you don't stop, this old master will destroy your defensive shield even if it costs him his life," the old man roared. He was an immortal ascension boundary 5th stage cultivator. If he hadn't been forced into a desperate situation, he wouldn't have shouted such grievances. In his heart, he was also secretly regretting not being able to snatch the evil spirit essence just now. He really shouldn't have tried to kill that little brat. Even a rabbit would bite when cornered, let alone this group of hot-blooded youngsters. "Wait, stop fighting." Dao Yang's eyes suddenly lit up as he looked down and shouted in surprise, "Brother Yang isn't dead." Everyone was stunned, their Yuan Qi also calming down as they followed Dao Yang's gaze down below. Sure enough, in the middle of the evil spirit spring, there was a vague figure exuding a flickering light. It was indeed Yang Kai. Not only was he not dead, he was actually standing quietly in the middle of the evil spirit spring. The scattered evil spirit essences around him seemed to be sucked in by an invisible force, pouring into Yang Kai's body and disappearing. "Brother Yang!" Dao Yang called out anxiously. "Heh heh." From the boiling evil spirit spring, Yang Kai let out a low chuckle, a chuckle that made everyone's hair stand on end. Gradually, The sound of his laughter grew louder and louder, rolling like thunder. "Brother Yang, what's wrong with you?" Dao Yang's expression changed slightly as he nervously looked down. Suddenly, a pitch-black color emerged from Yang Kai's body. Even in the middle of the evil spirit spring, this black color was quite conspicuous, like a black hole, and when it appeared, it instantly swallowed all the light, causing everyone's vision to go dark. When he came back to his senses, he saw that there was a black figure below him. Only a pair of scarlet eyes were emitting a bloodthirsty and cold light that seemed to be choosing people to devour. "It's become the demon race." The old man let out a strange cry, thinking that Yang Kai had just swallowed so much evil spirit essence and was unable to refine it in time, allowing the evil in the evil spirit essence to take control of his mind. This explanation was also reasonable. With so much evil spirit essence pouring into his body, even the old man would not be able to withstand it. Although Yang Kai's secret art and Yuan Qi could restrain evil spirits, it was likely that he would not be able to survive. Hearing him say this, the people on the high platform who had just breathed a sigh of relief suddenly changed their expressions. Lung Shan's eyes flashed as she looked down suspiciously, feeling somewhat uncertain. Of all the people present, only she knew that Yang Kai could use another kind of evil spirit essence that was different from true Yang Yuan Qi. When they were in the isolated world, she and Zemo also thought that Yang Kai had become the demon race, but the result was a big joke. At that time, the situation was exactly the same as what was happening now. Yang Kai was wrapped in darkness, but this time it was more serious. Did he really become the demon race? Lung Shan asked herself, but she couldn't figure it out. Go up, I'm fine." Yang Kai's voice came from below, cold as steel, but quite calm. Hearing this, Lung Shan couldn't help but feel happy, knowing that Yang Kai was really fine. Hu Mai was also stunned, but Hu Jiao quickly pulled her up. The two sisters hurriedly hid inside the defensive barrier, their eyes looking down in amazement. Chapter 342. Looking down from the high platform, the evil spirit spring that covered the ground below had already risen to a very high position. This spring water wasn't really liquid, but it looked just like liquid, thick and flowing, containing all kinds of evil and danger. The evil spirits scrambled for this spring water like a flock of ducks, constantly devouring the energy within. But if a martial artist fell into it, they would definitely not have a good ending. But now, Yang Kai was wrapped in black qi, completely unaffected by the evil spirit spring water. He was like a fish swimming in water, constantly swimming back and forth. Wherever he passed, all the scattered evil spirit essences were sucked into his body. Occasionally, he would encounter one or two evil spirits, but they didn't attack him. These evil spirits didn't seem to notice his existence and turned a blind eye to him. The group of people were all stunned. The old man on the high platform was also stunned, his face filled with disbelief. This little brat's current state was extremely strange. The energy he was exuding was completely different from before, filled with an evil and brutal aura. He was like a murderous demon that had lost his mind, and his aura was so evil that it made people's hearts tremble. What made the old man even more shocked was that Yang Kai was currently collecting evil spirit essences. The evil spirits had been fighting each other for a long time, so there were countless evil spirit essences below. That brat had only gone there for a short while, yet he had already collected a few dozen balls. It was enough to make people envious. Moreover, he was directly absorbing the evil spirit essences into his body, as if he wasn't worried that the evil contained in these essences would cause any harm to him. He. Yang Kai happily swam in the evil spirit spring water, collecting the essences while constantly letting out a cold laugh. There was some surprise and pride in his laughter, but more than that, it was excitement. Both his body and mind were extremely excited, even his blood was boiling, as if he was holding a naked beauty in his arms and tasting her. The unyielding golden skeleton was pulsing rhythmically. The evil spirit essences that it had just absorbed had made the golden skeleton very happy, and it was crazily devouring the evil energy in the surrounding evil spirit spring water. This energy seemed to suit the golden skeleton's appetite. His body turned into a huge vortex, sucking in all the evil energy around him. Not only did Yang Kai not feel uncomfortable, but his face was full of joy. He did not know why this was the case, but since the golden body liked this kind of energy, there was no need to delve into it. He just needed to absorb it. After inhaling for a while, Kai Yang suddenly felt a sense of saturation. It was not that the golden body was full. The golden body was like a bottomless pit. No matter how much energy it absorbed, it would never be saturated. Instead, it was because he had reached the limit of his current realm. If he did not break through this shackle, the golden body would not absorb anymore. Otherwise, it would be a burden to Yang Kai. He was aware of this. Yang Kai couldn't help but feel a little regretful. This crazy absorption not only replenished the golden avatar, but also stored nearly 100 evil spirit essences in the Dantian. Yang Kai didn't have the time to refine these essences, so he could only put them in Dantian for now. He couldn't save any more. Yang Kai was especially interested in the special essence left behind by the soul evil spirit. Compared to the other essences, this one was undoubtedly different. He had to quickly refine it so that he could absorb more of it and take the opportunity to break through his current realm. Thinking so, Yang Kai's heart suddenly began to heat up. Turning his head, Yang Kai saw that the group of people on the high platform were still looking at him worriedly. In particular, the Hu sisters couldn't hide the worry and concern in their beautiful eyes. Feeling warm in his heart, Yang Kai rushed to the high platform and waved to them. "Give me all your purifying spirit bottles." Heh. Chen Yi grinned greedily. "I knew Brother Yang was a righteous man." Saying so, he quickly collected all the purifying spirit bottles and threw them to Yang Kai. There were only 5 purifying spirit bottles. Among them, 3 were from Treasure Instrument Sect while 2 were from Ghost King Valley. The Hu sisters had only fled to this place, so naturally they didn't have any purifying spirit bottles. A bottle could hold 20 essences, so 5 purifying spirit bottles equated to 100. With such a huge number, anyone would inevitably be tempted. Yang Kai continued to shuttle back into the evil spirit spring. Wandering unscrupulously among the countless evil spirits, he constantly used his purifying spirit bottles to collect essences. After filling one bottle, he would switch to another. After a short while, all 5 bottles were filled. The old man and the free and unfettered sect disciples all stared blankly, everyone's eyes filled with greed and envy. They were so busy fighting on this high platform that they didn't even have the time to collect star sources, but Yang Kai was simply wandering around the spring without any hesitation, collecting one star source after another, which would make anyone's eyes go red with envy. Comparing the two, how could they not be envious? The old man was now filled with regret, his old face filled with a variety of emotions, all kinds of emotions churning in his heart. If he had known that this little brat had such great ability, how could he have torn apart all pretense of cordiality with Yang Kai? However, it was only at this moment that she witnessed his mysteriousness and strength. Even if she regretted, it was useless. Just now, when he had struck Yang Kai, he had completely ruined any hope of making friends with Yang Kai. Even if he couldn't get Yang Kai to help him create that magical defensive barrier, he could at least collect some essences for him. Yang Kai's action of collecting essences was even simpler than picking a watermelon. What an unlucky year, he had let go of such a good opportunity. In an instant, the old man felt his teeth hurt, his liver hurt, his stomach hurt, his entire body hurt. Yang Kai took 5 full bottles and tossed them up, not in a hurry to return, instead floating above the evil spirit spring. He turned his head and gloomily glanced at the old man. The old man's heart skipped a beat, not knowing what Yang Kai's gaze meant. Just as he was feeling conflicted, he saw Yang Kai grin at him, his scarlet eyes flashing a strange light as he leisurely flew over. Everyone on the high platform was on high alert, as if they were facing a great enemy. They were already struggling to deal with these evil spirits, so if Yang Kai took advantage of this opportunity to add insult to injury, they would be finished. This was really a case of when it rains it pours. When the boat is late, the wind blows. Yu Qing secretly blamed the old man for his rashness just now and smiled towards Yang Kai from a distance, saying, "Friend, please slow down, our free and unfettered sect has no grudge with you, please think twice before you act." Seeing Yu Qing act in such a low-key manner, the Ghost King Valley disciples couldn't help but feel a burst of joy. Looking at Yang Kai again, they didn't think he was evil at all. Instead, at this moment, his back was handsome and extraordinary. He didn't say anything. He didn't take any action, but his presence alone was enough to make his enemies tremble in fear. As a man, this is how it should be, Chen Yi said with a look of worship. Lung Shan snorted and rolled her eyes. Friend, if you have something to say, we can talk it out. Yu Qing saw Yang Kai remain silent and didn't know what he wanted to do. He could only laugh dryly. The old man's face was also gloomy and uncertain. He remained silent, allowing Yu Qing to act like a grandson, but he also wanted to use him to inquire about Yang Kai's intentions. I want something. Just as Yu Qing was feeling restless, Yang Kai opened his mouth. Yu Qing calmed down and quickly replied, What does friend want? As long as my free and unfettered sect has it, we will give it to you. We will immediately offer it. Here's your purifying spirit bottle. Yang Kai grinned, his white fangs appearing particularly terrifying as they were wrapped in black qi. Of course. Yu Qing didn't dare to neglect and quickly took out the purifying spirit bottles his brothers carried. They only carried 2 purifying spirit bottles. This was something Yang Kai was also clear about. Moreover, these 2 bottles also contained a few evil spirit essences. Lightly stowing them away. Turning to look at the old man, Yang Kai sneered meaningfully, slowly narrowing his eyes as he said, Do you need me to say more? The old man coldly snorted, his expression clearly unhappy. He was an immortal Ascension Boundary 5th stage master, and although he knew Yang Kai was powerful, in fact, he wasn't afraid of him. However, he still had 4 juniors he needed to take care of. Without the certainty of killing Yang Kai in a single blow, the old man didn't dare act rashly. Since Kai Yang had so blatantly demanded something from him, and in front of a junior, the old man naturally couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Face aside, the old man didn't want to provoke Yang Kai any further. After snorting, the old man suppressed his anger and said, Give it to him. But a young man next to the old man hesitated. Obviously, he didn't want to give in so easily. I said give it to him. The old man shouted. Yes. The young man glared hatefully at Yang Kai, grit his teeth, took out 2 purifying spirit bottles from his sleeve, and tossed them to Yang Kai. Yang Kai reached out and caught them, staring at the young man indifferently. I'll remember you, be careful. The young man was full of vigor, and with the support of his elders, he sneered at Yang Kai. Yang Kai's face went cold as a cold light flashed across his eyes. But before he could act, the old man swung his hand and slapped the young man. **** With an incomparably crisp sound, the young man was sent spinning several times on the spot, and after stabilizing himself, one of his cheeks suddenly swelled up. Will you die if you don't speak? The old man glared at him fiercely. This old master doesn't want to provoke this strange little brat any longer, but you're still talking nonsense. If you really force him to act now, none of you will leave here alive. The young man was obviously stunned by this slap, seemingly not having expected his honored master to slap him, covering his cheek in a daze, his eyes filled with humiliation and anger, his face alternating between red and blue, but he didn't dare to open his mouth to say anything, swallowing back the blood in his mouth. Little friend, are you satisfied? The old man glanced at Yang Kai faintly. Ha 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 ha. Yang Kai laughed wildly, nodding repeatedly, satisfied. Please go back. The old man quickly said. Yang Kai standing next to their high platform always made the old man feel like he was being stabbed in the back. He was constantly on guard against Yang Kai's sudden attack while simultaneously dealing with the evil spirit, making it extremely difficult for him to do so. No hurry. Yang Kai slowly shook his head, his expression calm and composed. The old man's expression changed slightly, his expression becoming uncertain. Yang Kai waved the purifying spirit bottle in his hand at the old man and slowly began to collect the evil spirit essences floating around their high platform. These essences were left behind by the old man's group and the free and unfettered sect's group after they had killed the evil spirits. There were many of them and should have been their spoils of war, but since no one had the time to collect them, they could only let them float around. Chapter 343. Watching Yang Kai leisurely collect the evil spirit essences, Yu Qing couldn't help smiling bitterly, opening his mouth but not daring to say anything. The old man's complexion was also ugly, and he had the urge to vomit blood. After a long time, young Kai finished collecting the evil spirit essences around them, glancing over at them and chuckling. "Continue, I'll come back later." Saying this out loud really made one feel like they were about to die from anger. The 4 purifying spirit bottles hadn't yet been filled, so young Kai walked around in a circle before returning. Arriving at the high platform where everyone was resting, young Kai tossed the 4 purifying spirit bottles to the Hu sisters and said, "You keep an eye on them, I need to digest them first." The Hu sisters' faces were like peach blossoms as they smiled sweetly. Although the last 4 purifying spirit bottles were all given to Hu Mai and Hu Jiao, no one from Ghost King Valley or Treasure Instrument sect complained. Each of them had already harvested 2 bottles of evil spirit essences. Young Kai's previous debt to Ghost King Valley had not only been completely repaid, but had also given them a big harvest. Needless to say, Dao Yang and the others from Treasure Instrument sect had come here because their honored master wanted to see if this evil spirit essence could be used for artifact refining. Originally, they had only wanted to kill a few red evil spirits, but now that they had reaped such a huge harvest, how could they not be happy? What's more, Hu Mai had just jumped into the evil spirit spring to look for young Kai, which made everyone realize that the relationship between young Kai and the twins was not as simple as they had thought. They weren't strangers who had met by chance. No wonder young Kai was able to rescue the twins from the high platform just now. Considering all this, everyone looked at young Kai, then at the Hu sisters, all of them wearing strange expressions. Sure enough, he's a pervert. Lung Shan secretly ground her teeth as she cursed. Back in that isolated world, this little bastard had taken advantage of her and Zemo. If it weren't for the enemy attacking them at the last moment, perhaps he and Zemo would have already been together. At that time, if Zemo was really eaten by him, Lung Shan estimated that she wouldn't be able to escape from his grasp. Never would he have thought that even after entering the evil cavern, he would still be able to meet 2 beauties who had an unclear relationship with him. Moreover, they were twins. How many women did he know outside? That's why he encountered such a low probability thing. Thinking of this, Lung Shan became more and more annoyed. She secretly decided that she would never deal with young Kai again. Although he was indeed a good person. But he was a bit too much of a playboy. If she walked together with him again, she might lose her chastity without even knowing how. She still wanted to marry into a good family. Glancing at the Hu sisters, Lung Shan's mouth moved. There was no sound, but she mouthed the words "love-struck fool." The high platform was filled with jubilation. Yang Kai sat cross-legged on the ground, retracting the evil energy into his unyielding golden skeleton. The Dantian's true Yang Yuan Qi once again filled his meridians. The evil energy contained in the evil spirit spring could be directly absorbed into his unyielding golden skeleton, but the evil spirit essence couldn't be absorbed. It needed to be refined with true Yang Yuan Qi. Slightly investigating the Dantian's essence, Yang Kai found that there were more than 100 of them, but only one of them could be determined to be a special essence. It was the one left behind by the soul-type evil spirit after it died. Thinking about it, Yang Kai decided to save it for the end. Good things should always be left for the end. Leading the Dantian's essence into his meridians, Yang Kai used his Yuan Qi to refine it. At the same time, he felt the shackles of his own martial Tao. The shackles of heaven and earth enveloped his body. This layer of shackles couldn't be felt before reaching a certain level, but every time a cultivator was about to break through, they could clearly sense it. Breaking through this layer of shackles would allow a cultivator's strength to rise to the next level. If they couldn't do so, their cultivation would remain stagnant. The stronger one was, the harder it was to break the shackles placed on one's body. This was one of the reasons why a cultivator's strength increased slowly in the later stages. Sometimes a cultivator would be stuck in a certain realm all year round because they were limited by their aptitude, unable to break through that bottleneck. This kind of shackles was especially obvious when one reached the peak immortal ascension boundary. Therefore, in today's world, very few people broke through to the above immortal ascension boundary. And every cultivator who broke through to the above immortal ascension boundary was a powerful overlord. At the very least. They were all masters of first-class forces. If there was an exception, it would be Ling Tai-shu. After all, High Heaven Pavilion was only a second-class sect, and now it was on the verge of destruction. Yang Kai used his heart to feel, gathering his essence, qi, and soul, constantly attacking the shackles that bound him. Time slowly passed. After an unknown amount of time, that layer of shackles was suddenly broken. His whole body felt light, as if he had just broken out of a cage, and a sense of freedom was born in his body and mind. It was as if this world could no longer hinder his steps to the peak of the martial Tao. An invisible aura, with Yang Kai as the center, suddenly spread out, creating a layer of ripples visible to the naked eye. The people who were chatting and laughing were startled by this sudden movement and quickly turned their heads to look at Yang Kai. After confirming that he was making such a commotion because of his breakthrough, they all had strange expressions on their faces. Daring to break through in such a dangerous environment, Yang Kai's courage was really admirable. Yuan Qi Realm, 6th stage. Even if he succeeded in breaking through, Yang Kai didn't immediately get up. He still circulated his secret art, absorbing the evil spirit essence that had just been completely refined into the unyielding golden skeleton. The golden skeleton was no longer saturated and produced a whirlpool-like suction force, swallowing the purified evil spirit essence. The realm that had just broken through quickly stabilized. In the Dantian, there was still a mass of evil spirit essence left. It was the special evil spirit essence left behind after its death. Yang Kai's face shook, and his spirit rose. He was also looking forward to what benefits this special evil spirit essence would bring him. The Yuan Qi drove it through his meridians, refining and burning it. The impurities were expelled little by little, turning into useless substances that were discharged from the body. It was worthy of being called a special evil spirit essence. Yang Kai spent a full hour to completely refine it. After the refined evil spirit essence flowed through his meridians, it brought a strange feeling that made him feel comfortable. This was an effect that other evil spirit essences did not have. Suddenly, it followed his meridians and rushed straight to the top of his head. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. The next moment, Yang Kai felt that his spiritual energy had increased by a large amount. This was actually an evil spirit essence that could increase his spiritual energy. Not only that, but there also seemed to be something else. Yang Kai opened his eyes, and there seemed to be an electric current flashing through them, shining brightly as he thought for a while. The corners of his mouth could not help but show a strange smile. He slowly got up. Yang Kai looked towards the high platform where the old man was. "Brother Yang, are you okay?" Chen Yi hurriedly asked. "Ian, I can't be better." Yang Kai nodded slightly. Looking at the old man, his eyes gradually became dangerous. Seemingly aware of Yang Kai's gaze, the old man could not help but look back. With just a glance, the old man frowned. He found that this strange young man seemed to be a little different from before. Compared to before, he seemed to have become more confident, more arrogant, and more overbearing. Just after breaking through a small realm, he already has ideas about this old man. The old man sneered in his heart, really overestimating himself. Yang Kai was indeed thinking about this old man. Just now, in order to snatch that special evil spirit essence, this old man had attacked Yang Kai. If it were not for Yang Kai's good physique, the extremely pure Yuan Qi in his body, and the fact that he had condensed a Yang liquid shield at the critical moment, he would not have been able to block that attack. Although he was about to get some interest back, but it had always been Yang Kai's principle to do things. Swallowing humiliation was not something he wanted to do. His eyes flashing, Yang Kai gradually withdrew his hostility. He was not completely sure that he could kill the old man. The old man's realm was too high. Even with the means he had just obtained, he may not be able to kill him. He had to plan carefully. "Brother Yang." Dao Yang's expression was dignified. Looking at Yang Kai, he said, "We just discussed and felt that staying here is not a long-term solution." Yang Kai also felt the same way. Just now, they couldn't escape because countless evil spirits had gathered from all directions, so there was no way to escape, so they could only hide on this central high platform. Now that all the nearby evil spirits had gathered, the outside was undoubtedly safer. Pausing for a moment, Yang Kai asked, "What do you think?" "We want to leave here." Chen Yi frowned, "But there are also concerns. Once we leave this high platform, we may be targeted by those evil spirits, making it difficult for us to escape. What do you want me to do?" They now regarded Yang Kai as their backbone, so Yang Kai naturally knew that they were pinning their hopes on him. "Brother Yang, can you fly while maintaining such a large-range defensive shield?" Chen Yi asked somewhat embarrassedly. Their Ghost King Valley had the most people, followed by the 4 from Treasure Instrument Sect, and finally the Hu sisters. So many people wanting Yang Kai to protect them was really too much. Moreover, they didn't know how much Yuan Qi Yang Kai had left to squander. "I haven't tried yet, but I should be able to." Yang Kai thought about it carefully. Maintaining such a large defensive shield would definitely consume a lot of Yuan Qi, but he still had a lot of Yang liquid stored in his dantian. "If that's the case, then we can take the risk." Chen Yi nodded slightly. Dong dong. Just as everyone was discussing this matter, not far away, a rapid and powerful heartbeat sounded. Listening to this sound, it seemed to be the beating of a huge heart. Everyone's expression changed as they turned to look at the source of the sound. After a moment of silence, the same thumping sound rang out again. This time, everyone could clearly see that when the thumping sound rang out, the evil spirit spring was actually churning violently. *PU. The evil spirit spring below the high platform suddenly seemed to be boiling, one giant bubble after another appearing. As soon as the bubble appeared, it burst open, releasing a burst of evil energy. As the bubble burst, the entire evil chi spring water below began to surge up rapidly. Chapter 344. The high platform they were standing on was about 70 to 80 meters above the ground. Originally, after such a long time, the water level of the evil spirit spring should have risen to about 30 meters. However, at this moment, the thick liquid of evil spirit spring water was rising at a crazy speed, as if it was about to explode. Everyone's complexion couldn't help changing greatly. In just 3 breaths of time, the evil spirit spring water had spread to the same height as the high platform and was still rising crazily. "Not good." Dao Yang cried out in alarm, his face filled with horror as he watched all this happen. The others also hurriedly shrank back to the middle of the high platform, fearing that they would accidentally fall off and into the evil spirit spring water. With such a large amount of evil spirit spring water erupting, it was already too late for them to escape. Everyone's faces were ashen as they suddenly had no idea what to do. The old man's eyes were also filled with panic. Although he knew about the existence of the evil spirit spring, this was the first time he had encountered one, so he didn't know what was going on. Seeing that the evil spirit spring water was about to envelop them from all directions, the old man knew that this was not a place to stay for long. Letting out a roar, anger rose in his heart as he shouted, "If you don't want to die, come with me." As he spoke, a fierce burst of energy erupted from his body, opening a gap in the encirclement of the evil spirits as his Yuan Qi burst out, protecting his 4 juniors as he rushed towards Yang Kai and the others. The free and unfettered sect disciples also hurriedly followed, using all kinds of martial skills and artifacts to protect themselves, so for a time they didn't have to worry about their safety. Yang Kai's expression was indifferent as he narrowed his eyes at the old man who was rapidly approaching them. A cold light flashed across his eyes. The purpose of the old man's flight was self-evident. In a moment, this entire area would be flooded with evil spirit spring water. At that time, the high platform where Yang Kai and the others were standing would become the only safe haven. With 20 layers of true Yang Yuan Qi layered over each other, it would be more than enough to resist the corrosion of the evil spirit spring. In this life and death crisis, the old man had decided to take a risk. Flying closer, the old man didn't rush to attack. Instead, he simply looked at Yang Kai and said, "Little friend, there are many unpleasant things between us. But at this time, this old man won't waste time with you. How about you ask your friends to give up a few seats?" Yang Kai looked at him mockingly. "Can't you see that our side is already full?" The old man's face darkened, and he said anxiously, "That's why I asked you to give up a few seats." With the evil spirit spring acting so strangely, he didn't know what would happen next. Without this old master, an immortal ascension boundary master, What chance did you have of surviving? These friends of yours have varying strengths. Why don't you just send a few of the weaker ones out? You need to know that making things convenient for others is also making things convenient for yourself. Senior. Yu Qing anxiously called out. Listening to the old man's words, it seemed that he had no intention of bringing along the free and unfettered sex people, so naturally he was anxious. When the others heard this, they also looked at the old man angrily. When he said this, it was obvious that he wanted these people to go out and die in their place. Yang Kai sneered and shook his head. It's quite convenient for me now. That's why I don't want to make things easy for others. Junior, you asked for it. The old man's face filled with anger as he angrily shouted. The evil spirit spring was rising higher and higher, so he didn't have any more time to waste. If this old master doesn't have a good time, don't think you'll have a good time either. Free and unfettered sect, join with this old master and drive them out. Only by occupying this high platform can you survive. The old man shouted. Good. Yu Qing was overjoyed and didn't hesitate to agree. On the high platform, everyone's expression was gloomy to the extreme. This old man was obviously like a cornered dog jumping over a wall. With an Immortal Ascension Boundary 5th Stage Master and 7 or 8 Yuan Qi Masters attacking them, they didn't know if they could resist. Only Yang Kai was smiling lightly as he stared at the old man with contempt and ridicule. Kong. A fire dragon suddenly burst out from the high platform and flew towards the old man's group. It was unknown who had taken the initiative to attack. The high platform covered by the true Yang Yuan Chi's defensive barrier had now become the only place to save their lives. No one wanted to give it up, so with the old man acting so overbearingly, naturally some people couldn't hold themselves back. In the next moment, a variety of martial skills and artifacts were unleashed. The group of people around the old man didn't dare to show weakness and also returned the favor. However, after only one round of confrontation, the people on the high platform saw that the situation was not good. All of their attacks had been intercepted by the old man, an Immortal Ascension Boundary Master. Although the old man had expended a lot of effort to intercept them, he had still managed to do so. On the other hand, the attacks from the Yuan Qi cultivators behind the old man had caused the people on the high platform to panic. For a moment, everyone's faces went pale. With an Immortal Ascension Boundary Master blocking the front, even if they wanted to kill the people behind them, they wouldn't be able to. In a short time, the evil spirit spring had risen again and was about to swallow up the group of people. The 4 young men beside the old man and the free and unfettered sect disciples also used every ounce of strength they had, desperately pushing their true chi to the limit as they launched a fierce attack. As for the old man himself, his eagle-like eyes were locked onto Yang Kai. His intuition told him that this mysterious young man was very strange and definitely had some unknown means. If it were any other time, he would have carefully probed this young man to prevent himself from capsizing, but at this critical moment, how could he have the leisure to do so? Waving his hand, a huge palm print shot towards Yang Kai, intending to kill Yang Kai in one fell swoop. Yang Kai coldly snorted and pointed his finger forward, summoning a blood-red shield in front of him. Kong. The palm print slammed into the Yang liquid shield, instantly shattering it, but it still managed to block the old man's blow. Not waiting for the old man to attack again, Yang Kai's mind suddenly burst forth with an invisible energy, silently bypassing the old man's shield and flashing into the crowd behind him. The old man's expression changed. In that instant, he seemed to be aware of the power of his divine sense. Before he could figure out what was going on, behind him, a purple halo suddenly exploded. The burst of light formed a fan shape, enveloping the 4 young disciples of the old man and the free and unfettered sect disciples. As the silent attack spread out, those true element boundary experts suddenly became dazed, and their faces contorted in pain. Immediately after that, another burst of light exploded. A third burst, ooh-ah. Yu Qing clutched his head, the piercing pain making it impossible for him to circulate his Yuan Qi, causing him to fall headfirst into the pool of evil spirit spring. As his body fell into the evil spirit spring, a series of sizzling sounds rang out, and at a rate visible to the naked eye, Yu Qing's clothes and flesh were quickly corroded, leaving behind only white bones. In addition to Yu Qing, the free and unfettered sect disciples and the old man's 4 juniors also suffered a similar blow. Several of them fell down with Yu Qing while the rest were directly dismembered by the evil spirits. In the blink of an eye, the old man was the only one left in his camp, and from the looks of it, he seemed to have suffered some injuries. Deng 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 deng. The old man hurriedly retreated a few steps, a look of horror on his face as he stared at Yang Kai, his voice trembling as he muttered, "Soul skill." Yang Kai's lips curled upwards as a brilliant smile appeared on his face. How is this possible? The old man's expression was one of utter disbelief, unable to believe what he was seeing. This was just a Yuan Qi 6th-stage cultivator. How could he display a soul skill? Moreover, this soul skill was quite familiar. It was clearly the same one used by the soul-type evil spirit just now, but the scope of the attack had been slightly altered by this young man. It's a soul skill. Yang Kai stared at the old man provocatively. I obtained it from that source just now. Old man, you're dead. Impossible. The old man's expression was somewhat ferocious. Although the 3 halos just now had not seriously injured him, his divine sense had been somewhat damaged, and the pain in his head was still lingering. Even if you can comprehend a soul skill from that source, without cultivating your divine sense, you can't display it. Saying so, the old man's eyes lit up again as he stared at Yang Kai in disbelief. Could it be that that source just now allowed you to cultivate your divine sense? Let's just assume so. Yang Kai chuckled, not bothering to explain. His divine sense had long since been cultivated, and Yang Kai's current spiritual energy was quite strong, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to display 3 soul skills in a row and still be so calm. Even a master who had just broken through to the immortal ascension boundary couldn't display 3 soul skills in a row. On the high platform, everyone stared at Yang Kai in surprise. None of them had expected that at this critical moment, Yang Kai would once again turn the tide. The time they had been in contact with Yang Kai hadn't been long, but in this short period of time, Yang Kai had displayed one after another incredible means, repeatedly creating miracles. Everyone knew that if they hadn't encountered Yang Kai on this trip to the evil cavern, they would have likely died several times over. Not to mention this life-saving grace, Yang Kai's strange and powerful strength was enough to make everyone secretly decide to befriend him and not have any conflicts with him in the future. The old man stared at the evil spirit spring below with a pained expression. The 4 juniors he had tried so hard to protect had all fallen just now, so naturally, his hatred for Yang Kai had reached a boiling point. Hesitating for a moment, the old man suddenly turned around and walked away, muttering, "Little brat, you better live well, this old master will one day skin you alive." Even if Yang Kai had mastered a soul skill, the old man wasn't afraid of him. What the old man was afraid of was the rapidly rising evil spirit spring below. Unable to quickly occupy the high platform, the old man could only try to escape and see if he could escape with his life. "You want to run? Do you think you can?" Yang Kai coldly shouted, directly leaping off the high platform, quickly chasing after the old man, his figure leaping up, his divine sense flashing in his mind, but this time it was somewhat different from the previous one. Condensed into a single point, it transformed into a purple streak of light and shot towards the old man's head. This was also a soul skill obtained from the soul-type evil spirit, but the previous one was a large area of effect attack while this one was a single target attack. The two had some similarities, but the methods used were different. The old man obviously hadn't expected Yang Kai to have this kind of skill and was caught off guard by the purple streak of light. His body trembled as he fell, half of his body falling into the evil spirit spring. Chapter 345. The old man screamed as he desperately pushed his Yuan Qi to resist the demonic Qi invading his body. But no matter how hard he tried, the strange ink-like aura continued to spread. Even now, it was still rapidly spreading to his body. The old man's courage was completely shattered, and he used all his strength to try and climb up, but there seemed to be a huge suction force coming from the evil spirit spring water, as if there was a giant invisible hand pulling him down towards the bottom. It was like he had inadvertently fallen into a swamp, and the more he tried, the faster he fell. Yang Kai took this opportunity to fly above the old man's head. Using both of his palms, Yang Kai fiercely struck out with the momentum of a mountain. Yang Kai used his Burning Sun's 3-layer blast and soul skill at the same time. Yang Kai sent out a series of palm prints, each of which contained a faint purple glow. Yang Kai was determined to kill him. The old man's immortal ascension boundary 5th stage strength was like a tiger in a cage. Unable to display his full strength, the old man was forced into the evil spirit spring by Yang Kai. A shrill scream rang out. Vaguely, one could see the old man struggling and resisting under the ink-like spring water. However, he was unable to break free from the shackles of the evil energy in the spring water. He sank deeper and deeper, and gradually disappeared. After a short while, the old man's voice also disappeared as he died a violent death. Yang Kai's expression also became somewhat ugly. He hadn't expected this evil spirit spring to be so powerful that even an immortal ascension boundary master couldn't break free from it. When he used the evil spirit chi in his unyielding golden skeleton, he could swim freely in the evil spirit spring, but if anyone else fell into it, Yang Kai was afraid they would end up no different from free and unfettered sect. On the high platform, Zhenyang Yuan Chi's defensive barrier, would it be able to withstand it? Glancing over at the old man with some worry, Yang Kai quickly withdrew. After using his spiritual energy so many times, he was indeed tired and weak, but Yang Kai still didn't show the slightest sign of it. Landing back on the high platform, everyone held their breath as they stared at him, seemingly unable to believe that an immortal ascension boundary 5th stage master had been killed by him. Although everyone knew it wasn't Yang Kai's own ability, but rather his reliance on the evil spirit spring, but even so, it was still shocking enough. Ahem. It looks like we're the only ones left here, Xinyi coughed lightly, drawing everyone's attention. Yeah, they're all dead. Lung Shan looked at the empty platform on the other side, feeling like she was in a dream. Ghost King Valley had offended free and unfettered sect this time, so she was worried about being punished by her master when she returned, but she hadn't expected that Yu Qing and the others would all die, a result she was quite happy to see. No one from the free and unfettered sect had returned alive, so naturally none of them knew what had happened here. It's up, Dao Yang shouted as he stared outside with a heavy expression. At this moment, the evil spirit spring outside once again erupted, and the swelling water quickly covered the high platform, quickly rising several dozen feet, filling the entire evil cavern. They turned their heads and looked around. Other than the high platform, they were surrounded by spring water. The dark water blocked out all light. It was as if they were hiding in a bubble at the bottom of the sea. Through the defensive barrier, one could occasionally see some evil spirits wandering in the spring water. Everyone couldn't help rejoicing in their hearts. Fortunately, they hadn't rashly left the high platform just now, otherwise, they would have been swallowed up by this spring water before they could escape. Psi Lolo. When the spring water came into contact with the true Yang Yuan Qi defensive barrier, there was a burst of explosive sounds as the two opposing energies collided, rapidly consuming each other's energy. For a time, everyone's mood became tense as they stared at the defensive barrier. In this case, if the defensive barrier broke, with the exception of Yang Kai, everyone else would die. Dong dong. The sound coming from the evil spirit spring became more and more intense, causing the heartbeat of everyone on the high platform to involuntarily quicken. All of them were on tenterhooks, not knowing what was about to happen. Pu. The sound of something breaking rang out. Zhao Rong of Treasure Instrument Sect screamed, her beautiful face going pale. It seems the first layer of the defensive barrier has been broken. Is that true? Cheng Ying's face also went green. How long had it been since the first layer of the defensive barrier had been destroyed? At this rate, in less than a stick of incense worth of time, the high platform would no longer be safe. It's true, I saw it, Zhao Rong cried out. Sometimes, death wasn't that scary. A sudden sword strike could end a person's life before they could even feel it. What was terrible was the feeling of waiting for death, the endless torment of anxiety and fear. It made one feel like a year. What if it all breaks? Cheng Ying asked with a sad face. Don't jinx it. Lung Shan scolded. Immediately, everyone turned their heads and stared at Yang Kai. It was as if they thought he could still create another miracle and turn the tide. Yang Kai sniffed and said, I can still condense such a defensive barrier. Everyone's face lit up with joy and Chen Yi couldn't help but laugh. I knew Brother Yang definitely had some tricks up his sleeve, haha. Now there's no need to worry. Hiding inside the defensive barrier was extremely safe. Besides feeling a little scared, there was nothing else to worry about. Dao Yang frowned slightly. Looking at Yang Kai thoughtfully, he quickly asked, Brother Yang, how many more layers can you condense? Yang Kai checked the yang liquid inside the dantian and said lightly, 50 layers is fine. Dao Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. He stared at Yang Kai like he was some kind of monster. The amount of yuan qi contained in this defensive barrier was already enormous, 50 layers. Dao Yang almost couldn't imagine how Yang Kai had so much yuan qi in his body. But immediately, his brow wrinkled again and he said worriedly, the key is when this spring water will disappear. Even if Brother Yang does his best, I'm afraid he can only maintain it for half an hour. If the spring water is still there after half an hour, then, Yang Kai also frowned, this was what he was afraid of. Although he didn't need to worry about his own safety, the Hu sisters were still here. He couldn't just stand by and watch them die without doing anything. They were a pair of twin sisters. When Yang Kai was still weak, they had been good to him. Yang Kai also cherished their friendship. He said 50 layers, but that was the most conservative estimate. When that time came, he would do whatever it took to bring the Hu sisters out. He would wrap them in his own yuan qi and not let them get hurt. The reason why he was still here was that Yang Kai wanted to do his best. After all, he had a good relationship with the Ghost King Valley and Treasure Instrument sect. He was just one person, so he couldn't take care of so many people. Although he was a bit selfish, in this crisis, he could only take care of those he was familiar with. For a time, everyone on the high platform was a little worried and uneasy. Hu Maier quietly glanced at Yang Kai, but there was no trace of worry on her face, she just leaned towards him. Hu Jiao noticed her sister's small movement and just smiled bitterly, glancing away. Right, do you have any news about my Grand Master? Worrying wasn't a good idea, so Yang Kai simply stopped thinking about the current situation and stood next to Hu Maier, quietly asking her about the sect. Your Grand Master? Hu Maier looked at him in surprise, but because the distance was too close, she quickly averted her eyes. Ling Tai Shu. Oh. Hu Maier nodded, her brow wrinkling slightly as she thought for a moment, we don't know. I only know that one night, a great battle broke out in your High Heaven Pavilion. It seems that the central capital's Chiu family brought people to cause trouble. The battle lasted for a long time, and I heard from my father that Sect Master Ling seemed to have broken through to the above immortal ascension boundary. Sect Master Ling is really amazing. What was the result of that battle? Yang Kai asked anxiously. It seemed to be a draw. Sect Master Ling was very strong, and with the assistance of the 4 elders, the central capital's Chiu family masters were all repelled, but since then, Sect Master Ling and the others have disappeared. That's good. Yang Kai couldn't help feeling relieved. Although he knew that his Grand Master wouldn't have any accidents, after all, he hadn't heard any news about him for so long, so he couldn't help feeling a little worried. But because of your High Heaven Pavilion's involvement, our Blood Battle Gang and Stormhall's people were unlucky enough to die. Hu Maier glared at Yang Kai, seemingly angry but also happy. Her tone didn't contain the slightest trace of blame. What happened? The Demon Lord came from your High Heaven Pavilion, and the central capital's Chiu family also sent people who were repelled by you. Moreover, the Chiu family seems to have lost an important figure who has yet to be heard from. Those people were very overbearing and even put the blame on our Blood Battle Gang and Stormhall. Our 2 sects were forced to participate in the encirclement of the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land in order to prove our innocence. That's why my sister and I ended up here. Hu Maier explained softly. Listening to her, Yang Kai understood why the 2 sisters had appeared in the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land. They must have been dragged here to fight and ended up separated from the rest of the group. Unfamiliar with this place, the deeper they went, the more they encountered that group of scum from the free and unfettered sect, forcing them to enter the evil cavern. I'm just joking with you, I don't blame your High Heaven Pavilion, those people were unreasonable. Hu Maier saw Yang Kai's silence and thought he was a bit angry, so she couldn't help feeling a bit flustered. I know. Yang Kai's face was a bit gloomy, quickly changing the subject. What about Su Yang? Have you heard any news about her recently? No. Hu Maya obviously didn't know that Su Yang and the others had passed through the void corridor and were now 10,000 kilometers away, shaking her head. Your High Heaven Pavilion no longer has anyone. After the Chiu family's important figure went missing, those invading masters burned down the entire High Heaven Pavilion. Now it's a ruin. Taking a deep breath, Kai Yang said in a deep voice, I understand. You, don't worry. Hu Maya saw Yang Kai's ugly expression and didn't know how to comfort him, instead taking the initiative to take his hand and gently squeeze it. Yang Kai glanced at her in surprise. Hu Maya lowered her head and didn't say anything, thinking that maybe she would die soon, but in any case, she wouldn't let go. It wasn't like she hadn't been presumptuous in front of him before. In the past, she had been quite bold in seducing him, but after cultivating the twin chi shared spirit divine art, her temperament had been greatly affected by her sister and was no longer as unrestrained as before. Chapter 346. Time had never passed so slowly. Under the pressure of death, everyone was nervous and their hearts were racing. Everyone's eyes were also constantly focused on the situation of the true Yang Yuan Qi defensive barrier. Every time a layer of the barrier was broken, it seemed to make everyone's heart turn cold. As time passed, the 20 layers of the barrier were completely broken. Yang Kai had quickly condensed a new barrier to protect everyone, making everyone feel extremely grateful. In the surrounding evil spirit spring, there were constantly evil spirits flying around and huge bubbles rising from the bottom. The temperature quickly dropped. The group of people here were all Yuan Qi cultivators, and with Yuan Qi protecting their bodies, the cold could not affect them at all. But now, those with slightly lower strength had their hair covered in white frost and were shivering while hugging their arms. Even the breath they exhaled was a white mist. Even those with higher strength could not resist. Everyone present, except for Yang Kai who was indifferent to the cold, no one could ignore it. The surrounding evil spirit spring seemed to contain a cold that penetrated deep into the soul, eroding everyone's warmth at this moment. Dong dong. The movement from the evil spirit spring continued without stopping, and at this moment it was already quite strong, with each vibration causing the high platform to jump several times. Pa. The surrounding huge bubbles burst one after another, releasing a variety of evil spirits that were both dangerous and gloomy. The true Yang Yuan Qi defensive barrier was still bursting layer after layer, and Yang Kai's expression gradually became heavy. After a while, suddenly, a series of muffled sounds like a war drum came from the evil spirit spring. After the sound, all the movement disappeared. Everyone was startled and looked at each other with a blank expression. Before they could figure out what was going on, an extremely cold and dense energy suddenly came from the other side. This cold and gloomy was like the cold wind blowing from a snowy mountain that had not melted for 10,000 years, but also like the ghost wind blowing from the 9 hells of purgatory. Everyone couldn't help but shudder at the thought. Catcher. The true Yang Yuan Qi defensive barrier covering the high platform was covered with a layer of ice, a scene that shocked everyone present. He couldn't help but be incomparably shocked. The cold energy and the evil energy were both grinding away at the true Yang Yuan Qi's defensive barrier, causing it to disappear at twice the speed. No way. Cheng Ying opened his mouth wide, his eyes filled with bitterness. Originally, they were already on tenterhooks, and it was already difficult enough for them to resist. Now that such a change had occurred in their surroundings, it was clear that they were not going to be given a way out. As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding evil Qi spring water suddenly rushed towards a certain direction. Even the evil spirits swimming in it were unable to escape. It was as if a huge vortex had appeared over there, swallowing everything in the evil cavern. Countless sharp howls were heard as the numerous evil spirits struggled. Even the people on the high platform were affected by the suction force. Fortunately, they were all inside the defensive barrier and were not sucked in by the evil Qi. He only slightly activated his Yuan Qi. This counteracted the suction force. What happened? Chen Yi frowned as he stared in that direction, only to see that not far from where the evil spirit spring used to be, there was a cold light. This light was not considered bright, but it was able to shine through the ink-like spring water. Evil spirit essence. The evil spirit essence contained in the spring, it was the treasure that the old man had wanted before. Unfortunately, he had died before he could see the evil spirit essence appear. Everything was converging towards the evil spirit origin. It was like a heart, letting out thumping sounds as it absorbed energy and gradually recovered. Slowly, the light disappeared. It seemed to have been blocked by the spring water. Layer after layer of the true Yang defensive barrier quickly broke apart. Yang Kai stared towards the source of the light and was preparing to use another 20 drops of Yang liquid to condense the defensive barrier when Lung Shan suddenly shouted in surprise, "The spring water is receding." Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed and followed her gaze to the side. Sure enough, they saw some light coming from the side. This was the light that belonged to the evil cavern. The spring water that filled the entire area was quickly flowing towards the spring's mouth, naturally emptying the area. The heavens help the worthy. Chen Yi was overjoyed. He had thought that this time it would really be difficult to escape, but at the last moment, the spring water was actually being sucked back in. According to this trend, it wouldn't be long before all the spring water around the high platform disappeared. Yang Kai frowned and quickly said, "Once it's safe, leave immediately. I'm afraid something big is about to happen." "What do you mean?" Lung Shan was startled. "Something big is taking shape." Yang Kai's expression sank as he stared in the direction of the spring's mouth. The others did not have a divine sense and could only feel the huge energy fluctuations coming from the spring's mouth, but Yang Kai could feel them more clearly than anyone else. The nearby spring water, as well as the evil spirits that had not yet died, were all being sucked in and transformed into a kind of evil energy that was slowly condensing. With the evil spirit essence emerging from the spring's mouth as the core, it was slowly forming a body. With such a huge amount of energy gathered, this new thing was likely terrifying to the extreme. A moment later, the surrounding spring water finally receded. "Let's go," Yang Kai shouted, and everyone immediately leapt off the high platform and flew towards the exit. Finally having a chance to escape, whether it was Ghost King Valley or Treasure Instrument Sect, all of them ran faster than a rabbit, hating that they were born with 2 more legs. Yuan Qi fiercely urged herself to use her movement skills and even some auxiliary artifacts, only wanting to get away from this dangerous place as quickly as possible. Yang Kai's speed was very fast, so he took the lead and flew in front of everyone. Beside him were the 2 Hu sisters. The 2 sisters seemed to have used some kind of mysterious technique, but Yuan Qi seemed to be connected to each other as she effortlessly followed behind Yang Kai. After flying for more than 10 kilometers, a loud roar suddenly rang out from behind them. This roar shook the entire evil cavern, as if a long-imprisoned beast had been released and was finally able to see the light of day again. Immediately afterwards, a huge wave of qi hit them from behind. If they hadn't been so far away, they would have been swept away by this wave of qi. Perceiving the terror of this unknown force, everyone paled and increased the force of their feet. This kind of hurrying was naturally extremely fast. "Over there, the exit is over there." Cheng Ying had always been in charge of scouting the terrain, so he was more familiar with the terrain of the evil cavern than anyone else. Following the direction he pointed, Yang Kai really saw a ray of light a few kilometers away. Quickly turning around, he led everyone in that direction. Everyone couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief, wishing they could immediately escape from the evil cavern. However, just as they were about 2 kilometers away from the exit, several Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters suddenly flew over. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed as he secretly became vigilant. These Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters all exuded thick demonic qi and a ghostly aura. Needless to say, they were definitely not good people. With such a big change occurring inside the evil cavern, it wasn't surprising that nearby Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters would be attracted here, but what made Yang Kai depressed was that these masters were actually flying towards him, obviously wanting to investigate the situation inside the evil cavern. The distance between the 2 sides was rapidly narrowing, but the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters didn't put Yang Kai's group in their eyes. Before they even arrived, the leader of this group shouted, "You over there, stop for this old master." Hearing this, Everyone's heart sank and their faces filled with displeasure. Just as they were about to escape, suddenly being blocked like this, anyone would feel uncomfortable. They are the Demon King's subordinates. Lung Shan's expression changed greatly as she whispered to Yang Kai, "These four are all immortal ascension boundary 7th or 8th stage masters, we can't beat them." She was afraid that Yang Kai didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and would offend these four masters, so she hurriedly warned him. Moreover, these four were the real Avilders. The evil deeds they had committed were too numerous to be recorded. Even in the ash-grey cloud evil land, these four were quite loathsome existences. However, the four of them were proficient in joint attacks, so even if they were only immortal ascension boundary 7th or 8th stage masters, they could still contend with a peak immortal ascension boundary master, so even if they had enemies all over the world, they still lived a comfortable life. What's more, the four of them were also the profound Yin Ghost King's trusted subordinates. Their tempers were unruly, so if they were displeased, it was possible they could kill everyone here in a single blow. Yang Kai naturally understood the depths of this situation, so when he heard the old man's shout, he hurriedly stopped. Although he was extremely anxious in his heart, there was nothing he could do. The four old men flew forward side by side. They wore clothes of similar styles, but different colors. The different colors represented their identities. Demon King, green, yellow and purple. The blue-robed old man stared at Yang Kai's group with a dignified expression and asked, "Who are you? Do you know what's going on here?" Yang Kai frowned and said lightly, "We are from Ghost King Valley and have been here for life experience, so we don't know what's going on." "You don't know?" The blue-robed old man coldly snorted, apparently seeing that Yang Kai was lying. Why bother talking nonsense with him? Just take him and ask him on the way. The green-robed old man frowned. "En." The blue-robed old man nodded, his figure leaping over to Yang Kai's side. The Yuan Qi in Yang Kai's body instinctively reacted, but he quickly suppressed it. Facing an immortal ascension boundary 7th or 8th stage master, everyone here couldn't win even if they put their lives on the line, let alone four of them. Acting rashly would only make things worse. The blue-robed old man easily lifted Yang Kai up and didn't seal his cultivation. Seemingly very confident in his strength, the blue-robed old man's figure flickered as he rushed inside. "You go first. When I come out, I'll find you." Kai Yang only had time to shout out to the crowd before the blue-robed old man carried him away and disappeared from sight. Yang Kai. The Hu sisters' beautiful faces suddenly went pale. They were so close to escaping from the evil cavern, so how could something like this happen here? Chapter 347. The blue-robed old man grabbed Yang Kai and quickly rushed towards the interior of the evil cavern, the other three following closely behind. The green-robed old man glanced back with a smile, his eyes full of interest. Suddenly, he waved his hand and two green lights flew back like spirit snakes coming out of a cave. The Hu sisters had only just shouted when their delicate bodies were hit by these green streaks of light. Immediately after, the two sisters simultaneously turned green. This unforeseen event caused them to be stunned on the spot. Hurriedly inspecting themselves, they discovered that they had not suffered any injuries and their true qi circulation was not hindered in any way. Lung Shan's complexion changed greatly as she cried out in alarm, "Tarsal bone shadow." The Ghost King Valley disciples all turned to look at the Hu sisters again, their eyes filled with sympathy. "What do you mean? What is that?" Hu Jiao asked in a deep voice. Lung Shan's face was extremely ugly, and she was worried. After hesitating for a while, she opened her mouth to explain, "Demons and monsters, one of them is wearing a green robe. This person likes women, so I'm afraid you've been targeted by him. This Tarsus shadow is his unique skill. Once he hits you, he can sense your location at all times. He can even use this skill to affect your mind and make you surrender and listen to him obediently." The Hu sisters' beautiful faces suddenly went pale. Moreover, the color on your body is also a sign of this skill. As long as you go outside, anyone who sees this color will know you've been hit by the tarsal bone shadow. After a pause, Lung Shan continued, "Right now he's going inside to investigate the situation, so he can't split himself up. That's why he left this tarsal bone shadow technique on you. As soon as he finishes his business inside, he'll definitely come looking for you. Even if he doesn't go in person, someone will capture you and give you to him in order to gain his favor. You're in big trouble. Chen Yi also said solemnly. Is there any way to break this skill? Hu Jiao asked coldly. Even an immortal ascension boundary 9th stage master may not be able to break this skill. Unless we kill him or find someone stronger. Lung Shan bit her lip. Hearing her say this, the Hu sisters' hearts suddenly sank to the bottom. Yang Kai didn't know about the Hu sisters' situation. However, the two beams of green light and the obscene light in the eyes of the green-robed old man were clearly seen by him. The look in Yang Kai's eyes suddenly became much colder. The other three people seemed to have become accustomed to this small action of the green-robed old man. Their expressions didn't even change. There was no need to talk about it. The few of them just kept flying inside. The flight speed of an immortal ascension boundary master was extremely fast, so it took Yang Kai a long time to reach the cave entrance, but after a short while he was brought back. After returning to the two high platforms not far away, Kai Mai and Wang Liang narrowed their eyes and looked forward with a solemn expression. At this moment, the evil spirit spring water had completely receded and in its place was a dark cocoon-like object. On the cocoon, lines that looked like the veins of a human body were crisscrossing, and an indescribable amount of energy was flowing inside them. The entire cocoon was 40 to 50 feet tall. It was incomparably enormous, and its entire body emitted a ghastly and icy cold feeling. The strands of seemingly material evil devil chi seemed to have transformed into numerous tentacles that swam and fluttered outside the cocoon. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Dong dong. A strong throbbing sound came from inside the cocoon, accompanied by a powerful wave of energy that could affect one's soul and divine sense, sweeping across the area where Kai Mai and Yang Kai were standing. The blue-robed old man carrying Yang Kai's expression changed slightly as he quickly formed a few hand seals and stretched out his hand in front of him. This time, he managed to block the attack. What is this? The yellow-robed old man's expression became extremely heavy as he stared at the cocoon, a look of confusion on his face. The four of them had profound strength, were not young, and were quite knowledgeable. Although they could feel a huge pressure coming from the cocoon in front of them and knew that the thing inside was definitely not to be trifled with, none of them could recognize what it was. Such a rich demonic chi was visible to the naked eye. In all their lives, the four of them had only ever seen this from a single person. That was the recently born Demon Lord. A few months ago, when the four of them followed the profound Yin Ghost King to see the Demon Lord, they had the privilege of witnessing the Demon Lord's glory. The Demon Lord's demonic chi had already transcended the level of evil. The profound Yin Ghost King had said that this was a demon, a real demon. In front of a demon, all demonic chi was just a small matter. Little brat, I will ask you one last time, do you know what happened here? If you dare say you don't know, this old master will imprison you here and let you fend for yourself. If you tell me, this old master will let you live. The blue-robed old man put down Yang Kai and looked at him indifferently. Yang Kai's expression was calm as he glanced at the old man before frowning. This is something hidden in the evil spirit spring. Evil spirit spring? Kai, Mai, Wang, and Liang's expressions changed, and the voice of the green-robed old man suddenly rose by a lot. The four words evil spirit spring were undoubtedly very attractive to them. Yes. Yang Kai nodded and didn't conceal anything, quickly recounting what had happened just now. The more the four old men listened, the more excited they became, their eyes blazing, their original fear of the big cocoon slowly replaced by greed, all of them staring towards it with gleaming eyes. After Yang Kai finished speaking, the four old men's breathing became somewhat unstable. What do we do? The other three looked nervously and expectantly towards the blue-robed old man, waiting for him to make a decision. The blue-robed old man's heart was obviously also filled with turmoil. The evil spirit spring rarely appeared, but every time it did, it would bring with it a treasure that many immortal ascension boundary masters desperately fought over. But this time, the evil spirit spring had actually bred such a treasure, something that far exceeded their knowledge and understanding. The blue-robed old man didn't know if he should gamble his life here. We're not far from breaking through to the immortal ascension boundary 9th stage, but we haven't been able to find a suitable energy source. If we miss this opportunity, who knows how long we'll have to wait. The purple-robed old man obviously wanted to take a risk, his expression eager. En. The green-robed old man and yellow-robed old man nodded at the same time, agreeing with what the purple-robed old man said. Since all three of them had such intentions, the blue-robed old man couldn't act arbitrarily. What's more, he himself was also inclined to take a risk, it was just that he had some scruples in his heart. After a moment of silence, the blue-robed old man's eyes flashed and his expression became firm, quickly declaring, "Then let's do it." Saying so, he casually tossed Yang Kai about 1,000 meters away. Before he hit the ground, Yang Kai felt a tyrannical force suddenly erupt from his body. This force was filled with all kinds of sinister malice, and even though Zhenyang Yuan Qi tried to counterattack, he was still unable to offset it. With a few cracking sounds, several of his bones broke, causing him to vomit a mouthful of blood mid-air. When he finally landed, Yang Kai was completely motionless, his face as white as a sheet of gold. The blue-robed old man suddenly laughed. "Heh, this old master is a man of his word, I'll let you live." Yang Kai glared towards the old man with resentment, his eyes filled with hatred and coldness. How could the blue-robed old man let him live? If it weren't for the Zhenyang Yuan Qi in his body being pure and vigorous enough, that sneak attack just now would have been enough to defeat Yang Kai's Dantian, completely crippling his cultivation and reducing him to an ordinary person. For an ordinary person without strength to stay here, there was no other end but death. Fortunately, they were far enough away that the blue-robed old man didn't know that Yang Kai's cultivation hadn't been crippled. If he were to learn of this, with this old man's vicious nature, he would likely immediately kill him. Not daring to show the slightest neglect, Yang Kai quickly sat down cross-legged to meditate, at the same time reaching out and dipping a drop of myriad drug liquid into his mouth to neutralize its medicinal efficacies. A moment later, the sound of a fierce battle rang out. The strength of the Kai Mai and Wang Liang was profound, and when the four of them joined forces, they could be called invincible in the immortal ascension boundary. At this moment, they were fiercely attacking the giant cocoon. A roar came from inside the cocoon, as if something had broken free from its shackles. Immediately, the blue-robed old man's frightened and surprised cry rang out, "Sure enough, it's a real demon, a demon spirit." With this shout, the battle became even more intense. It was likely that whatever was inside the cocoon had been forced out by these four people and was now engaged in a fierce battle with them. For a time, the entire evil cavern was filled with gusts of cold wind as the demonic qi churned. The already dim underground cavern was now plunged into darkness, as if it had been immersed in the underworld. Yang Kai was completely focused on healing his wounds. However, under the influence of the rolling demonic qi, Yang Kai clearly felt that there was something in his body that was throbbing incessantly, even his Yuan Qi was stirring up. Slightly startled, Yang Kai quickly investigated himself, but after understanding what was causing this reaction to the demonic qi, his expression suddenly became strange. After pondering for a long time, Yang Kai slowly diverted a part of his attention to the situation over there. The scene of the battle was extremely fierce, and although Yang Kai could not see what was happening over there, from the sounds coming from the mouths of the demons and demons, he could infer that even though they had taken advantage of the fact that the demon spirit had not fully matured to force it out of the cocoon, the four of them were still unable to gain any advantage and were instead forced to retreat. The strength of the demon spirit was far beyond their imagination. But in a battle between masters, even if they felt something was wrong, they would not be able to escape in a short time, so they could only grit their teeth and hold on, each of them displaying 10 to 20% of their strength. As time passed, Yang Kai's injuries quickly healed. Suddenly, an earth-shattering roar came from the other side. It seemed that Mo Ling had suffered a great loss. At the same time, the other four people exclaimed in unison. Among them, two of them stopped abruptly. It was very short and hurried. "Dead." Yang Kai's eyes lit up, his heart filled with joy. "Let's go." The green-clothed old man's shout rang out. He was rather flustered and also somewhat exhausted. Immediately afterwards, the sound of two people's robes fluttering could be heard. Obviously, The two people who were still alive were hurriedly fleeing. The demon spirit did not chase after them, just staying in place and letting out an unwilling roar. Yang Kai suddenly got up, his eyes overflowing with light, his mood fluctuating. The thing in his body was still throbbing, more violently than before, as if urging him to hurry. After hesitating for a moment, Yang Kai took large strides and quickly walked in the direction of the demon spirit. Chapter 348. More than a dozen kilometers away, Ghost King Valley, Treasure Instrument Sect, and the Hu sisters were quickly returning. "Why did you all follow us?" Hu Jiao asked with a wry smile as she ran with her sister. "Then why did you come back?" Lung Shan didn't answer. "Our relationship with him is different," Hu Jiao replied, but as soon as she spoke, she immediately attracted a lot of attention. Realizing the ambiguity in her words, she quickly added, "We've known each other for a long time. Blood Battle Gang and High Heaven Pavilion are close neighbors." Listening to her, everyone understood why Yang Kai seemed so close to them before. It turned out that there was such a relationship between them. "If we go back, it's very likely we'll die." Hu Jiao's voice became heavy. Lung Shan curled her lips. "That's you, we're all from Ghost King Valley, under the jurisdiction of the profound Yin Ghost King. Those monsters won't necessarily try to kill us." Chen Yi nodded. "That's right, Brother Dao, you shouldn't get involved in this mess." Dao Yang smiled lightly. "We're from Treasure Instrument Sect, so we won't die. As long as those 4 old fogies still have some sense, they'll know our value." "You, ha!" Hu Jiao was speechless for a while. How could she not know that this group of people were just finding excuses for themselves? In fact, they just wanted to help. After all, Yang Kai had saved them time and time again. Now that Yang Kai was in trouble, if they just left, they wouldn't be able to get over their conscience. But in the face of those 4 great masters, what was the use of these people? Ants trying to shake a tree. As they were running away, suddenly, an earth-shaking roar came from the other side. Then, the green light on the Hu sisters' bodies suddenly collapsed and disappeared. The group of people hurriedly stopped and stared at them in surprise. "What happened?" Hu Jiao looked puzzled. "Didn't you say that unless that old fogey died, the tarsal bone shadow would break?" Everyone was startled. Suddenly thinking of something, all of them looked aghast. "How could that be? How long has it been?" Chen Yi couldn't believe it. Less than half an hour had passed. How could that old fogey have died? But if that wasn't the case, why did the tarsal bone shadow on the Hu sisters suddenly disappear? Those 4, after joining forces, were invincible in the immortal ascension boundary. What kind of danger had they encountered? Why did he lose his life in such a short time? Shua Shua, 2 silhouettes flew in front of them. Everyone quickly raised their guard and looked up. They saw 2 of the demons and monsters from before quickly approaching them. One was the green-robed old man who had captured Yang Kai, and the other was the purple-robed old man. The yellow-robed old man was no longer among them. Moreover, these 2 people were no longer as arrogant and overbearing as before. At this moment, their faces were pale, and dark red blood flowed out from the corners of their mouths. Many pitch-black auras surrounded their bodies. These auras were like poisonous snakes, coiling around their bodies, making them look exceptionally terrifying. Both of them were severely injured. One of the green-robed old man's arms was dangling by his side, clearly broken. As for the purple-clothed elder's abdomen, there were 5 bloody holes, which looked like they had been caused by someone's fingers. As he ran, bright red blood flowed out, sprinkling all the way. Not seeing any trace of Yang Kai, everyone's heart sank. These 2 looked panicked. They passed over everyone's heads like a whirlwind, not even sparing them a glance. It was as if they had been greatly frightened. The 2 fleeing and panicked expressions of these 2 made everyone's hearts feel even more gloomy. 4 people had gone in, and within half an hour, 2 had died while the other 2 had fled with serious injuries. The danger over there was not something this group of young people could touch. If they continued to go deeper, they were afraid they would die without a doubt. Moreover, whether Yang Kai was still alive was unknown. It was very likely that Yang Kai had already died. "Elder sister," Hu Maya softly called out, looking towards the inside with a firm expression. Hu Jiao nodded with a cold expression, not saying a word, and together with her younger sister, the two of them rushed in like bolts of lightning. The Ghost King Valley and Treasure Instrument sect disciples glanced at each other before following without hesitation. Yang Kai condensed his Yuan Qi, his pace neither fast nor slow, cautiously and boldly approaching the battlefield. Not long after, the bodies of the green-robed old man and the yellow-robed old man came into view. Seeing their state of death, Yang Kai couldn't help narrowing his eyes. Although these two people's individual strength wasn't top-notch, only immortal ascension boundary 7th or 8th stage, Lung Shan had said that the four of them together were very powerful. The so-called demon spirit being able to break through their joint attack in a short time and kill two of them in one fell swoop showed how powerful it was. The green-robed old man and the yellow-robed old man's deaths were extremely miserable. One of them had half of his body missing and died with his eyes wide open while the other was a bloody mess. Looking at their injuries, it was clear that they had been killed by the demon spirit in a single blow, not even giving them time to react. Not far away, Yang Kai heard a panting sound and quickly looked up. More than 100 feet away, an extremely burly, naked, and wild-looking man was nailed to the ground by a long spear that was more than 10 feet long. The demon spirit. This was the demon spirit that had been bred from the giant cocoon and was the result of all the evil spirit spring water and the essence of hundreds of evil spirits. Unlike the demon spirit, this demon spirit had a complete body with 4 limbs and facial features, looking no different from a real person. Only streams of pitch-black aura danced around his body. Every single one of those streams of aura contained extremely terrifying energy. Perceiving the arrival of Yang Kai, the demon spirit just glanced at him faintly, the look in his eyes clearly not taking Yang Kai seriously. At the same time, the several black auras around his body directly swept towards Yang Kai. As the demonic chi surged forward, Yang Kai calmly stretched out his hand in front of him and condensed a layer of true Yang Yuan Qi into a defensive barrier in front of him. *PU. The demonic chi collided with the barrier and only pushed Yang Kai back a few steps, unable to break through it. The demon spirit glanced at Yang Kai with some surprise, seemingly not having expected him to have such a skill. After being stunned for a moment, he actually grinned at Yang Kai. Immediately after, he extended a strong and powerful hand and grasped the spear that was stuck in his abdomen. As he roared, he slowly pulled the spear out of his abdomen. This spear should be the artifact of the 4 evil spirits. By relying on the power of this artifact, they had nailed the demon spirit to the ground, allowing the two who were still alive a chance to escape. As the spear was pulled out inch by inch, the demon spirit not only showed no expression of discomfort, but instead wore a ferocious expression of excitement. Blood flowed out of the demon spirit's mouth, but instead of being red, it was a strange purple color. Before the demon spirit could fully pull out the spear, Yang Kai had already acted. With the sound of a chain being swung, an artifact suddenly flew out from Yang Kai's body, exuding a hot and pure energy that radiated in all directions. Affected by this energy, the demon spirit's body involuntarily trembled, and the black aura wriggling around his body also shrank back. Hualala, the sound of the chain in the air became clearer and clearer, and there seemed to be a mysterious power hidden within it, causing the demon spirit to feel great dread. In an instant, the chain completely unfolded, less than a meter long, with a collar at the top. The shape was simple, somewhat like a dog chain. Demon sealing chain. The artifact that Yang Kai had obtained from the bottom of the coiling dragon stream had been nourished with his true Yang Yuan Qi in the Dantian until now. It had never had any effect, but this time it actually reacted on its own initiative. If it weren't for the existence of the demon sealing chain, Yang Kai would not have rushed here. The demon sealing chain was an artifact left behind by High Heaven Pavilion's ancestral founder. It was able to seal the demonic chi of the demon spirit at the bottom of the coiling dragon stream, so it was not necessarily impossible for it to seal this demon spirit. When the demon sealing chain completely appeared, the demon spirit, who had never taken Yang Kai seriously, finally panicked, his expression suddenly changing as he cried out in alarm, "Pure Yang Supreme Artifact, Demonic Chi Nemesis." While speaking, the demon spirit's hand that was holding the spear suddenly pulled it out and, ignoring his own injuries, used all his strength to throw the spear towards the demon sealing chain. With a sharp sound, the spear broke through the barrier of space almost instantly and strangely appeared in front of the demon sealing chain. However, this blow, which was powerful enough to destroy the heavens and earth, actually hit thin air. The demon sealing chain suddenly became golden and the spear penetrated it without any hindrance. The next moment, with a flash of golden light, the demon sealing chain appeared around the demon spirit's neck, wrapping around it. With a sizzling sound, the demon spirit seemed to have been doused with boiling water, his body constantly emitting white smoke. The dark demonic chi around his body was also quickly suppressed into his body. Screams rang out as the demon spirit's huge body rampaged, both hands holding the demon sealing chain, trying to break it open, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not shake it in the slightest. Instead, his hands were scorched white smoke and he screamed again and again. The demon sealing chain flickered and flickered. The dark demonic chi around the demon spirit's body was also sometimes visible and sometimes suppressed. The two were obviously in a desperate struggle. Yang Kai's face was calm as he quickly retreated, a look of surprise on his face. He did not expect this demon spirit to be able to speak. He had witnessed the formation of this demon spirit with his own eyes. It was formed from the essence of the evil spirit spring by gathering the essence of the spring water and hundreds of evil spirits. A demon spirit like this should not have any cognition. It could be said that his mind should be blank, only instincts. But he could see at a glance that the demon sealing chain was the nemesis of the demonic chi. This situation was obviously not right. Yang Kai's expression flickered, not knowing how to explain everything in front of him. The battle between the demon spirit and the demon sealing chain did not last long. In less than an incense stick's worth of time, the winner was decided between the two. The demon sealing chain completely suppressed the demon spirit's demonic chi, and the demon spirit no longer resisted, allowing his body to emit white smoke. He sat cross-legged on the ground, looking at Yang Kai with a grin. There was not the slightest panic or fear of dying, but instead a strong interest and a strange light in his eyes. "Boy, I am the demon General Mungo. You dared to hurt a strand of my soul, this king will remember you. If there is a chance in the future, this king will personally capture you and make you beg for death. Hee." Chapter 349. After the New Year's Eve, the outside world was bustling with noise and excitement. When the Hu sisters rushed over, all they saw was a scene of devastation. There were traces of a fierce battle and on the ground, the corpses of the old men in green and yellow robes were strewn about. Her beautiful eyes darted around nervously as she saw Yang Kai standing not far away. He seemed to be holding a chain in his hand as he stood there motionless, exuding a cold and frightening energy fluctuation from his body. Shua Shua Shua. The people from Ghost King Valley and Treasure Instrument sect also arrived one after another, and after noticing the strangeness of Yang Kai's body, all of their expressions changed, wondering what had happened to him. However, the current situation was much better than everyone had feared. At the very least, Yang Kai didn't have any obvious injuries on his body and was still exuding a strong aura of vitality. Obviously, he wasn't dead. After noticing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Yang Kai also felt the arrival of these people, but he was still thinking about the words the demon spirit had said before he died. It was just one sentence, but it contained a lot of information. Demon General Meng Ji. This was the name the demon spirit had given him. From this name, it wasn't difficult to infer that he wasn't a newly born demon spirit, but rather someone with a long history. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such a name and status. Moreover, this demon spirit seemed to be formed from a wisp of his soul. The four masters of Kai, Mai, Wang, and Liang had joined forces and fought with him for less than an incense stick worth of time. 2 of them had been killed, the other 2 had fled with serious injuries, and he had been nailed to the ground by a long spear artifact. After that, he had pulled out the spear as if nothing had happened. If a wisp of his soul was so powerful, how terrifying would it have been if his true body had come here? This person's true strength was far beyond his knowledge and understanding. Yang Kai's heart surged. Fortunately, He was a true demon, and the demon sealing chain only reacted to true demons. If not for this, Yang Kai wouldn't have been able to do anything to him even after a few dozen years. After Demon General Meng Ge said those words, seemingly knowing that he didn't have much time left, he directly collapsed without hesitation. All that was left behind was a large mass of cold and surging source qi. This mass of source qi. It was the treasure hidden in the evil spirit spring. At this moment, it had been sucked into Yang Kai's meridians. The demon sealing chain in his hand seemed to have lost its spirituality in this battle. Its entire body was dim and lusterless, no different from a piece of junk. However, Yang Kai could still sense a little bit of life force hidden within it. As long as it was nurtured properly, it would definitely be able to recover in time. After all, this was a treasure left behind by High Heaven Pavilion's founder. Although it had been there for a long time, it wouldn't be so easily damaged. Faintly sighing, Yang Kai's heart was suddenly filled with boundless lofty sentiments. Today, he had witnessed Demon General Meng Ge's elegant demeanor, and his desire to pursue the peak of martial arts was once again aroused. Gritting his teeth, Yang Kai's expression was solemn, but his eyes were still firm. Yang Kai. Seeing that he didn't speak for a long time, the Hu sisters didn't know what was going on, so they could only call out softly, "I'm fine." Yang Kai took a deep breath and put the demon sealing chain back into his body. He turned to the crowd and said, "I want to find a place to go into seclusion. I know a suitable location. It's not far from here." Cheng Ying quickly said, "Take me there." The moisture in the air had condensed into ice, spreading out layer by layer. It was as if this place had been frozen since ancient times. Even though they were so far away, some of the weaker ones were still shivering. Every time they recalled the cold aura that penetrated deep into their souls, they couldn't help but feel horrified. What's going on? Chen Yi was puzzled. Why do I feel that this cold aura is so similar to the one from the evil spirit spring? Previously, when they were defending the high platform, everyone had also felt this cold aura once before, but it was far from as clear and terrifying as this one. Will Yang Kai be okay? Hu Mai'er whispered to her elder sister. Hu Jiao'er calmly shook her head. This should be the movement he made. As long as the movement is still there, nothing will happen. In fact, she herself wasn't sure, but she could only comfort her sister like this. Lung Shan nodded in agreement. Good people don't live long, but scourges live for thousands of years. I also think he will be fine. TSK TSK. Chen Yi smacked his lips. He looked at her mischievously. Junior sister, why do I feel that your words are so sour? Will you die if you don't speak? Lung Shan glared at him. Heh. Chen Yi suddenly laughed dryly. Inside the cave, Yang Kai's expression was indifferent, not affected by the cold aura at all. This kind of cold aura seemed to be very suitable for his current state. Not only did it not make him feel uncomfortable, but it also made him happy. In the past, when Yang Kai used the energy of the unyielding golden skeleton, the feeling he gave off was evil, but now, it was both evil and cold. The two complemented each other, complementing each other and increasing each other's tyrannical strength. Outside, the sun rose and the moon disappeared, but inside the cave, no one knew the passage of time. When the last strand of origin energy was refined, the energy contained within the origin energy seemed to have become a key. It unlocked the mysteries of the unyielding golden skeleton that had been sealed for many years. At that moment, the shackles of the unyielding golden skeleton were completely opened. A violent evil chi swarmed out, and the entire cave was instantly shrouded in darkness as the evil chi tumbled. Like a flood dragon, the roar of the evil chi never stopped. Yang Kai opened his eyes, and the scarlet in his eyes quickly receded, becoming black and white. At the same time, the various mysteries of the unyielding golden skeleton were thoroughly understood by Yang Kai. He understood everything clearly. Wrapped in the evil chi, Yang Kai's eyes shone brightly. Slightly narrowing his eyes, Yang Kai stretched out a finger and slowly touched his forehead, whispering softly like a dream. Become the demon race. In an instant, his body became a bottomless pit, crazily sucking in the dark evil chi from outside. All of the demonic chi was quite orderly, turning into visible streaks of energy that enveloped Yang Kai's body. In just a breath's time, all the dark evil chi disappeared, and in its place, Yang Kai's body was covered in black lines. These lines were densely packed, and in a strange and inexplicable way, they occupied 90% of Yang Kai's skin, except for his face. Slowly getting up, Yang Kai's expression was calm, without joy or sorrow, and his eyes were cold as ice. However, he could clearly feel that his current state was very different from before. Unlike before, when he was wrapped in black evil chi, even his face couldn't be seen clearly. Now, if Yang Kai didn't take off his clothes, he would look no different from normal. But now, the combat strength he could display was much more tyrannical than before. His realm was still the same, without the slightest improvement. That huge mass of evil spirit essence seemed to be the key to opening the unyielding golden skeleton. As Yang Kai stood up, the whole world seemed to tremble, and a constant buzzing sound rang out, giving people the illusion that the world was about to collapse. Moreover, the incomparable demonic chi radiated outwards, and everyone 1,000 meters away from the cave clearly felt it, their eyes trembling violently as they panicked. Gently clenching his fist, a crisp sound rang out. This fist seemed to contain the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Yang Kai had never felt such a sense of self-confidence, as if even if an immortal ascension boundary master stood in front of him, he would still be able to destroy them. With a wave of his hand, a jet of dark evil chi flew out like a spirit snake, directly drilling into the frozen cave wall in front of him. Under the perception of Yang Kai's divine sense, this evil chi broke through several dozen meters before slowly disappearing. Not bad, Yang Kai grinned, a somewhat ferocious look on his face. In addition, Yang Kai felt that the vitality contained in his body was unprecedentedly vigorous. Compared to normal, it was at least 4 or 5 times more vigorous. The most obvious feature of a vigorous vitality was its powerful recovery ability. Strength and speed were also linked to the strength of one's vitality. After becoming the demon race, all the vitality in his body seemed to have been activated, and even magnified. Chapter 350. Above the cave, Ghost King Valley, Treasure Instrument Sect, and the Hu sisters all wore anxious and worried expressions as they waited silently. Half a month had passed since Yang Kai had entered retreat, but even now he had yet to appear. On the contrary, the several dozen meters around the cave where he had secluded himself was now completely covered in thick ice. Why hasn't Brother Yang come out yet? Could there have been some kind of accident? Cheng Ying paced back and forth, his big mouth unable to remain silent. As soon as his words fell, he noticed 3 cold gazes directed towards him, causing him to shrink his head back and chuckle awkwardly. Chen Yi helplessly smiled. Unfortunately, none of us have reached the immortal ascension boundary. If someone had cultivated their divine sense, we could have investigated the situation. Dao Yang shook his head. No, even if we had our divine sense, we wouldn't be able to investigate. I'm afraid this ice can even freeze our divine sense. Listening to him say this, everyone was shocked. All of them became more and more worried. After a long time, a cracking sound was suddenly emitted from the ice layer that covered a radius of 100 feet. Immediately, the mysterious ice, which seemed to have never melted for tens of thousands of years, burst apart like flour. A figure shot out from the crystal powder that permeated the sky and flew over. Everyone's expression brightened as they quickly greeted him. You finally came out. If you hadn't come out, I'm afraid we would have had to fight our way in to see what was going on. Chen Yi saw Yang Kai land and immediately laughed. Yang Kai simply smiled back. Glancing around at the crowd, he nodded. I've made you worry. Since we've come out, let's leave this place first. The evil cavern is currently not peaceful. Lung Shan said somewhat anxiously. Dao Yang also nodded slightly. The evil cavern had released such a strong energy fluctuation, and even 2 of the Ghost King's demons had died inside. News of the appearance of the demon spirit had also spread. While Yang Kai had been in retreat, many immortal ascension boundary masters had rushed inside to investigate the situation. If they stayed here any longer, they would definitely be in trouble. About 30 kilometers away from the evil cavern, the group of people stopped. Chen Yi curiously asked, Brother Yang, I saw that the Ghost King's demons had suffered heavy casualties, so how come you're safe and sound? Looking at your expression, it seems you've gained a lot. Hearing his question, everyone cast their gazes over. They were also quite curious about this matter. Yang Kai smiled and nodded, just a small harvest. Those 4 old fogies fought with the thing that came out of the evil spirit spring water. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and I was able to take advantage of it. I was just lucky. This. Chen Yi was stunned. He smiled bitterly and said, "It is indeed the Tao of good luck. There is actually such a good thing in the world." Dao Yang chuckled and said, "Looks like Kai Mai and Wang Liang has given you an opportunity by capturing you. Those few old fellows have really tried to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice used to lure it, haha. Why didn't I run into him?" Cheng Ying muttered. Envy was written all over his face. Lung Shan sneered, "Unless it's Yang Kai, all of us here will die. Do you think it's easy to take advantage of others?" Cheng Ying laughed awkwardly. "I was just saying. How could everyone not know that taking advantage of Kai Mai and Wang Liang and Wang Liang and Wang Liang was more difficult than ascending to the heavens?" Although Yang Kai didn't explain in detail, there were definitely some unknown dangers involved. Only he could survive a battle with Kai Mai and Wang Liang and Wang Liang. During this time together, all of them had witnessed Yang Kai's strength countless times and knew that they couldn't treat him like an ordinary Yuan Qi cultivator. No matter what. Chen Yi's expression became serious as he patted Yang Kai's shoulder affectionately. "This time in the evil cavern, my Ghost King Valley owes you many lives. In the future, if Brother Yang needs anything, just say the word. I can't guarantee anything else, but all of us here will do our best to help, even if we have to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a sea of fire, even if we have to die 10,000 death." All the Ghost King Valley disciples nodded. Dao Yang smiled, "Us brothers and sisters are the same. Although we may not be good at fighting, when it comes to refining artifacts, if Brother Yang wants to refine some kind of artifact in the future, just come to my treasure instrument sect and find me." "Good." Yang Kai nodded. "This place isn't far from Ghost King Valley. Brother Yang, if it's convenient, why don't you come to my sect and play for a few days?" Chen Yi enthusiastically invited. "He shouldn't go," Lung Shan said indifferently. "Junior sister, you're being too unreasonable." Chen Yi's face suddenly became bitter. He wanted to communicate more with Yang Kai, but he hadn't expected Lung Shan to not give him any face. "I'm doing this for his own good, what do you know?" Lung Shan glared at him. "Honored master knows him. If he goes to Ghost King Valley, I'm afraid he won't live to see tomorrow's sun." Chen Yi was shocked, only now remembering that his honored master Gui Li seemed to have a great grievance with High Heaven Pavilion's sect master. Not daring to mention it again, he turned to Dao Yang and asked, "What about you?" Dao Yang smiled and said, "Even if Brother Chen didn't ask, we still wanted to go with you. I'm quite curious about Ghost King Valley's ghost breeding ground. I wonder if we can go and see it." "That's exactly what I was looking for." Chen Yi laughed heartily. "Then we'll part here. Take care of yourselves." Lung Shan looked at Yang Kai and said. Yang Kai smiled and nodded. "Let's go, Brother Yang, 2 young ladies, farewell." Chen Yi called out to everyone, cupping his fists towards Yang Kai and the Hu sisters. "Take care." Yang Kai returned the gesture, watching the Ghost King Valley and Treasure Instrument sect people leave together. So the people from the heretical schools aren't that bad after all. When there were only 3 people left. When the 3 of them were alone, Humaya suddenly said, "Those people from Ghost King Valley are all very good." Hu Jiaoa nodded and said earnestly, "Good and bad are only relative." Yang Kai stared at her with a dumbfounded smile. Hu Jiaoa blushed and glared at him, "Smelly brat. I haven't settled accounts with you yet." "What accounts?" Yang Kai looked confused. Glaring at him hatefully, Hu Jiaoa didn't have the nerve to bring up the previous matter, shaking her head and saying, "Nothing." "Where do you want to go now?" Yang Kai couldn't help feeling a bit confused, thinking for a while, but he didn't know where to go. Looking at his empty and confused eyes, Humaya couldn't help but wonder. For some reason, the Hu sisters' hearts ached. The powerful and strange man in front of them was no longer as confident and spirited as he had been in the evil cavern. He was like a child who had lost his way, not knowing where to go, not knowing where to go home. Affected by his confusion, Hu Jiao and Hu Maya couldn't help feeling sad. Let's leave the ash-grey cloud evil land first. Hu Jiao quickly changed the subject, really couldn't bear to see him lose his soul. Good. Yang Kai's eyes quickly regained their clarity and firmness. Although he didn't know where to go, the only thing he was certain of was that he had to constantly become stronger. The goal of the martial Dao had always been so clear, he would not be affected by anything. After a pause, asking, "Where do you want to go? Back to Blood Battle Gang?" "No." Hu Jiao smiled bitterly, "We can't go back until this war is over. Otherwise, we'll become a target of gossip." Their Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall were implicated because of High Heaven Pavilion and were forced to participate in this war by those great forces. If they went back at this time, it would only bring trouble to Blood Battle Gang. Then let's go find the others in the gang. Hu Maya proposed, "This time there are 50 people from the gang, they should still be fighting in that area. What do you think?" Hu Jiao looked at Yang Kai. "I'll follow you." Yang Kai shrugged his shoulders. He also wanted to find a place with a lot of people to inquire about the situation of High Heaven Pavilion, especially the whereabouts of Ling Taishu and Su Yang. Looking at the Hu sisters, he suddenly smiled, "But before that, you'll have to disguise yourselves." "What do you mean?" Hu Jiao frowned. "How did you end up being targeted by Free and Unfettered Sect? Haven't you learned your lesson yet?" Hu Jiao suddenly woke up and coldly said, "It's not our fault that we're beautiful. If it weren't for the fact that there are so many lechers like you in this world, how could we be so troubled? We didn't provoke anyone, but wherever we go, there will be people thinking about us. It's so annoying." Although they said so, Hu Jiao and Hu Maya had no choice but to listen to Yang Kai's advice. After all, this was the ash-grey cloud evil land. Lechers were more unscrupulous than outside. After dressing up, the two women's stunning faces were finally covered up. They didn't have the right tools on hand, so they couldn't do a good job, but at least they wouldn't attract unwanted attention. The older sister's face was now covered in dust and her hair was a mess, making her look extremely sloppy, while the younger sister's face was full of pockmarks, making her look completely unappetizing. After dressing up, the two sisters glanced at each other and couldn't bear it any longer. Although her face was slightly covered up, her enchanting and exquisite figure could not be hidden no matter what. The three of them traveled together, cautiously avoiding contact with others in the ash-grey cloud evil land. Yang Kai's spiritual energy played a huge role at this moment. Releasing his divine sense, the situation within a 30-kilometer radius was clear at a glance, allowing him to always be able to predict the enemy's movements and take the Hu sisters into hiding before any danger arrived. Without him, the Hu sisters wouldn't have been able to escape from the ash-grey cloud evil land. A month later, the travel-worn trio crossed a few thousand kilometers and finally left the ash-grey cloud evil land. After a month of hiding and fighting, whether it was Yang Kai or the Hu sisters, both of them were physically and mentally exhausted. Fortunately, along the way, there were only scares but no real dangers. The most dangerous encounter was when they encountered an Immortal Ascension Boundary 4th Stage Master who was caught off guard by Yang Kai's soul skill and was forced to flee. In that battle, Yang Kai was also seriously injured, but under the careful care of the two sisters and the effect of the myriad drug liquid, it only took him 2 to 3 days to fully recover. During this month, the Hu sisters gradually became dependent on Yang Kai and trusted him even more. No matter what Yang Kai said, they wouldn't refute him. Even the aggressive Hu Jiao no longer dared to treat Yang Kai as the little brat from 2 years ago. Many times she and her sister had witnessed Yang Kai's magical abilities, enough to change their perception of Yang Kai. If not for his protection, Hu Jiao didn't know what she and her sister would be like now. Chapter 351. Taifang Mountain was a mountain ridge that stretched from north to south. In this vast land, it wasn't too big, but it wasn't too small either. Originally, this mountain ridge could be considered a beautiful place. The trees on the mountain swayed in the wind, verdant and lush, and the birds chirped and the flowers were fragrant. But at this moment, this entire mountain range had become a battlefield. The south side of the mountain was where the ash-grey cloud Evil Land's forces gathered, while the north side was where the forces surrounding the ash-grey cloud Evil Land gathered. The two forces looked at each other from across the mountain range, using the entire mountain ridge as a battlefield. Over the past few months, Taifang Mountain had been severely damaged, and there were traces of blood and corpses everywhere. It was unknown how many cultivator had fallen here. This kind of confrontation between the two sides was not uncommon in other places. Taifang Mountain was just a small part of the entire front line. Since leaving the ash-grey cloud Evil Land, the Hu sisters had rushed here because their blood battle gang members had been sent here to fight. It was here that they had been chased down by a master and unable to return, forcing them to take refuge in the ash-grey cloud Evil Land. Along the way, Yang Kai had also learned a lot of useful information from them. The battle at the Taifang Mountain wasn't that important, so there weren't many experts gathered here. In addition to the blood group, there were also people from the Storm House, as well as several elites from other second-class forces. All of them were under the command of a first-class family. Seong family was the surname of this family. Because the people here had come from all over the world, most of them were from second- or third-class forces, so the Seong family had absolute leadership. Even if some people disagreed, they had no choice but to obey the orders of the Seong family. After all, the Seong family's heritage was truly rich. At the foot of Taifang Mountain was a place that was easy to defend but difficult to attack. There were many simple residences built here, and this was where the cultivator encircling the ash-grey cloud Evil Land rested. On this day, a man and two women had just arrived from outside, looking travel-worn. Before the three of them had even approached, they were stopped by a few people in bright clothes who asked them about their identities. These people saw that Yang Kai and the Hu sisters weren't very strong, so they didn't take them seriously. Therefore, he did not take them to heart. Stopping them for questioning was just a matter of routine. However, those few pairs of eyes were constantly looking at the beautiful figures of the Hu sisters. But when they saw their honor, they immediately lost their appetite, and their eyes revealed disgust. Yang Kai looked indifferent. He didn't say a word. On the other hand, Hu Jiao and Hu Mai hurriedly wiped off the disguise on their faces, revealing their original appearances. After wiping her face, although it was still dark, she finally had the grace of a beauty. The few people who were blocking the way stared blankly for a moment before suddenly asking, "Are you the young ladies of the blood group's Hu clan?" "Yes." Hu Jiao replied indifferently. "So it's you." The leader of the group revealed a joyful expression and said excitedly, "It's great that the two ladies are fine. Please come in." As he spoke, he stepped aside and said humbly, "We are just doing our job. Please don't take it to heart." Hu Jiao furrowed her brows. With a lukewarm expression, he was about to pass through with his sister and Yang Kai. The group of people looked at Yang Kai suspiciously, and the leader of the group asked cautiously, "Dare I ask these two young ladies, this is, my friend?" "Oh, since he is the young lady's friend. Then it's fine," the leader said with a smile. He didn't question them and let them pass. When the three people entered and disappeared, the leader said with a dignified expression, "Go and tell the young master that the Hu sisters have returned safely. Go quickly." "Oh." One of the people immediately flew out. Yang Kai followed behind the Hu sisters, shuttling through the area and soon arrived at the depths. "Over there." Hu Maya suddenly shouted in surprise and pointed in a direction. Looking in the direction she pointed, Yang Kai saw a group of people gathered there, but he didn't know what they were talking about. "It's Uncle Le." Hu Jiao also smiled and hurriedly walked over. The group of people on the other side sensed that someone was coming and all of them glanced over. The next moment, a middle-aged man who looked to be in his 50s or 60s stood up shakily and stared at the Hu sisters in a daze, his old eyes full of joy. Guan Kaila was an immortal Ascension Boundary 4th Stage Master and a master of Blood Battle Gang. During the battle with Meng Wu Ya, he had participated in it. However, unlike Long Zai Tian, Guan Kaila was extremely loyal to the Blood Battle Gang, as well as a member of the Hu family. He had watched the Hu sisters grow up, so in the Blood Battle Gang, his relationship with the Hu sisters was quite good. Is it the two young ladies? Guan Kai asked hesitantly. It's us, Uncle Le. Hu Jiao smiled. You really came back safe and sound. Guan Kai's old eyes suddenly burst into tears. The group of people around him also looked at the Hu sisters in pleasant surprise. The two sisters had disappeared for 2 to 3 months, and the last time anyone saw them was when they were being chased on Taifang Mountain. Everyone thought that it would be impossible for them to escape, but who would have thought that after 2 months, they would return to this place in perfect condition? Since the people here had gathered together, they must have a good relationship with each other. Seeing the Hu sisters return, of course they would be happy. There weren't many people in this group, only a dozen or so, but when Yang Kai swept his eyes over them, he recognized all of them. They were either from Blood Battle Gang or from Storm Hall. What's more, Yang Kai even saw Fang Ziki among them. This extremely patriarchal guy had actually been dragged here to fight. The disciples of the two sects came from the same place and had been forced to participate in this war, so it wasn't surprising that they would gather together. It's good that you're back, Sect Master can rest assured. Guan Kai quickly adjusted his expression and nodded with relief, but after his eyes fell on Yang Kai, he couldn't help but frown and ask suspiciously, where have I seen this little brother before? The Hu sisters suddenly didn't know how to explain. If it was just this group of people who knew Yang Kai's identity, it wouldn't be a big deal, but the key point was that there were other cultivator forces nearby. If they were to learn that Yang Kai was from High Heaven Pavilion, things wouldn't end well for them. Fang Ziki gave Yang Kai a meaningful look before quickly stepping forward and lightly coughing, wearing a strange smile, cupping his fists and saying, Storm Hall's Fang Ziki, this friend looks very much like an old friend of mine. May I ask this friend's name? Yang Kai. Yang Kai laughed in his heart. But his face remained serious. So it's Brother Yang, nice to meet you. Not only does this friend look like an old friend of mine, but his name is also very similar. Haha, don't you think so? Fang Ziki patted the shoulder of the junior brother next to him. Yes. It's. The junior brother nodded helplessly. Is there a need to be so secretive? The others also instantly understood the meaning of Fang Ziki's words, each of them wearing strange expressions. Guan Kai was an old and experienced man, so after hearing Yang Kai's name, he suddenly realized why this young man looked so familiar. It was him. The group of people had a tacit understanding, but none of them pointed it out. The scene was joyous and harmonious, but Yang Kai was keenly aware that under the smiles and comforts of this immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Blood Battle Gang, there was a trace of worry and anxiety. Just as they were talking, Fang Ziki's expression suddenly became cold, his eyes flashing, his mouth curling into a casual grin as he said, Xiongchu is here. As he spoke, he stared at the Hu sisters with a burning gaze. The group of people suddenly fell silent. Guan Kai's face sank, his expression suddenly becoming unpleasant. Looking back, Yang Kai saw that not far away, a handsome young man in bright robes was accompanied by two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. This young man strode towards them. His clothes were neat and tidy, and on his face was a refreshing smile. On top of that, his appearance was quite good, one could say he was handsome and elegant. Looking at his appearance, he was probably only 26 or 27 years old. Xiongchu. The Xiong family's young lord. The Xiong family was a first-class family, so Xiongchu's identity and status were naturally not low. Just like Bai Yunfeng and Dong Qinghan, they were both leaders of the younger generation. During this past month, Yang Kai had also heard Xiongchu's name from the Hu sisters several times, but every time he was mentioned, the two sisters would quickly change the subject, not wanting to say too much. Now that he saw him in person and the look in his eyes, Yang Kai finally understood why the Hu sisters didn't like to talk about him. Not only the Hu sisters, but everyone from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall also didn't seem to have a good impression of this young man. Only Xiongchu still wore a gentle smile as he strode over. Standing in front of them, his eyes flashed a gratified light as he called out softly, Jiao my you've come a long way, you must have worked hard. Guan Kai's old eyes narrowed, immediately causing the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind Xiongchu to stare at him. Hu Jiao's brow furrowed as she calmly said, Young Lord Xiong, Jiao and my are not names you can call, do you need me to remind you again? Xiong Chu's expression froze for a moment before he seemed to remember something, letting out a dry laugh and cupping his fists. "Two young ladies, please forgive me." Reuniting after such a long time, this one was a bit emotional and spoke without thinking. "I hope there won't be a next time," Hu Jiao snorted. Sure, I promise there won't be a next time." Xiong Chu nodded repeatedly before letting out a long sigh, his brow furrowed as he said, "But this one must first apologize to the two young ladies." "Oh." Hu Jiao's brow furrowed slightly as she stared at him faintly. Xiong Chu smiled wryly. "During that battle, the two young ladies fell into deep trouble. This one should have gone to rescue you, but unfortunately, my skills were lacking and my strength was too low, so I could only watch as the two young ladies were chased and captured. The two young ladies were gone for 2 to 3 months. Every time this one thought about it, it felt as if a knife had been twisted in his heart, making him unable to sleep at night. I wished I could sprout a pair of wings and fly to your side to ensure your safety." Suddenly, Xiong Chu smiled brilliantly. "Fortunately, the two young ladies have returned today, this one can rest assured." His smile was extremely sincere, as if the clouds had parted to reveal the light of the moon. However, the Hu sisters remained indifferent. Xiong Chu didn't seem to care, cupping his fists and saying, "Two young ladies have just returned from such a long journey, you must be tired. You should rest early and we'll talk some other time. If the two young ladies have any needs, please don't hesitate to tell this one. As long as it is within this one's ability, this one will definitely help." Finished speaking, Xiong Chu smiled and left. Chapter 352. Looking at Xiong Chu's back, Yang Kai was stunned for a moment. Originally, when he saw that this group of people didn't like him, Kai Yang thought that this person was some kind of playboy. The Xiong family was a first-class family, so it was normal for a young lord from such a big family to be somewhat domineering. But now, seeing him behaving appropriately and generously, Yang Kai couldn't help marveling at his gentlemanly temperament and his free and easy demeanor. Yang Kai could clearly see this young man's love for the Hu sisters, and he had no intention of concealing it. However, even though Hu Jiao treated him so coldly, he didn't show any annoyance, nor did he continue to harass her. He could be considered a true man. Yang Kai didn't know why the Hu sisters and everyone else here didn't like him very much. However, there was always a cause for everything. Yang Kai also knew that people's hearts were unpredictable, so he intuitively felt that this Xiong Chu must have a side to him that others didn't know. After Xiong Chu's back disappeared, Fang Ziji leaned over to Yang Kai and chuckled, "Yang Kai, don't be fooled by that guy. He may look kind, but in fact his mouth is filled with honey and his heart is filled with swords. He is a shrewd schemer, otherwise he wouldn't have been the one to command this place." "I know." Yang Kai nodded lightly. He didn't mean to underestimate Xiong Chu. Bai Yunfeng, for example, was domineering and arrogant, treating people with kindness and evil written all over his face. He didn't have the slightest bit of scheming, so he wouldn't pose any threat to Yang Kai. Instead, it was people like Xiong Chu who needed to be wary. He's in charge of this place. Hu Jiao, on the other hand, heard something unusual and looked at Fang Ziji in surprise. "What's going on? He's just a member of the younger generation. How can he be in charge of this place? Isn't there an elder of the Xiong family in charge?" Fang Ziki was stunned for a moment before letting out a hollow laugh and turning his eyes to Guan Kai Le. "The two young ladies must be tired from the long journey, you should rest first. I'll tell you later tonight." Guan Kai Le hesitated for a moment before saying, "All right." Hu Jiao didn't press him. First of all, she had already noticed that something was not quite right. Second of all, she and her sister really did need to clean themselves up. After all, she had been hiding with Yang Kai for a whole month. She couldn't bear the filth on her body anymore. Women always preferred cleanliness. "Yang Kai, come with me." Fang Ziki greeted him warmly. Smiling faintly, Kai Yang followed him. At night, a bonfire was lit outside. The people from Blood Group and Stormhouse were all gathered here. The bonfire flickered as Yang Kai and Fang Ziki roasted the game over the fire. Crackling sounds of explosions could be heard, followed by complete silence. After a long time, Hu Jiao asked, "Uncle Le, What's going on here? The number of experts had suddenly decreased by a lot. Where are the high-level members of my blood group and Stormhouse? Before they left 2 or 3 months ago, there were still many Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters here, but now that they had returned, there were less than 10 of them. However, Yang Kai soon discovered that there were less than 10 people left. Besides the 2 who were guarding Xiongchu, the rest of the Immortal Ascension Boundary cultivators weren't very strong. Although this location wasn't very important on the entire front line, it was still a small matter. But with so few masters here, it was simply too trivial. If the people on the other side of the mountain attacked, everyone here would likely be wiped out. Guan Kai sighed and said faintly, "It's like this. A month ago, we received an order from the central capital's 8 great families to mobilize all the masters who participated in the encirclement of the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land. It seems that the 8 great families and the Demon Lord are preparing for a final battle." "A final battle?" Hu Jiao exclaimed. Guan Kai nodded slightly. "After all, this isn't a military battle. We're all just people who want to settle our grudges. After fighting for so long, everyone wants to end it quickly. It's probably because the 2 sides have reached some kind of consensus that most of the masters here have been transferred away, including your father." "Father also went," Hu Maya murmured. Although Hu Man was an Immortal Ascension Boundary 8th stage master and was one of the strongest masters in the world, when compared to the rest of the world, he was nothing. Being pulled away to participate in the final battle, the slightest carelessness could result in his death. How could the Hu sisters not be worried? Our Storm Hall is also the same. Our master and elders have all left, and most of the masters on the other side of the mountain have also left. Fang Ziki smiled bitterly. His master was the Storm Hall's sect master, Xiao Ruo Han. If it weren't for sect master's request, this old master wouldn't have been able to stay. Guan Kai's expression suddenly became gloomy. Sect master said that the 2 young ladies would definitely come back to find him one day, so he asked me to stay. First, to take care of these young people, and second, to wait for the 2 young ladies to return. Now it seems that sect master's decision was extremely wise. Speaking of this, Fang Ziki became extremely resentful and bitterly said, "If it weren't for Senior Guan's repeated protection, your blood battle gang and my Storm Hall would have already died." "What happened?" Hu Jiao's face sank. "It's just like that." Fang Ziki sneered, "Because our 2 sects are next to High Heaven Pavilion, everyone here doesn't like us very much. When the 2 of you were here, Xiongchu still had to show off in front of you to gain more points, but when you disappeared, Xiongchu simply no longer paid attention to you. Whenever there was any danger, our 2 sects' disciples would always be the ones to face it." With a cold expression, Fang Ziki said, "When we came here, there were more than 100 people, but now? There are only a dozen left." Having witnessed the tragic deaths of so many of his junior brothers and sisters, the pain in Fang Ziki's heart could be imagined. After a pause, Fang Ziki suddenly remembered something and looked at Yang Kai awkwardly. "Don't mind me, I didn't mean anything else." "I know." Yang Kai nodded lightly. Although Fang Ziki said this because he didn't want him to misunderstand, Yang Kai also knew that because of his relationship with High Heaven Pavilion, Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall were now in deep water. In this regard, it was indeed High Heaven Pavilion that had implicated their 2 sects. However, it was also those outside forces that were looking for trouble. Just because the Demon Lord was from a sect, High Heaven Pavilion was burned down, and even Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall couldn't escape. This was a bit too unreasonable. After listening to Guan Kai's explanation, Hu Jiao thoughtfully said, "If that's the case, then the battle here is even less important, right?" Guan Kai nodded slightly. "Indeed. At the earliest, 3 to 5 days, and at the latest, half a month, the decisive battle will begin. The battle on the other side will determine the outcome of the battle. Therefore, whether it is us or the forces on the other side of the mountain, we don't care much about each other. All we need to do now is wait for the result, and we probably won't fight with the other side." "Oh." Hu Jiao nodded slightly. "So that's why the Xiong family is relieved to hand over the power here to Xiongchu." Fang Ziki chuckled. "They probably want to take advantage of this rare opportunity to temper him." Such an opportunity was rare. There were at least 5 or 6 forces gathered here, and with so many people gathered together, there was bound to be disputes. If Seong Chu could handle the matters here, then he would definitely be able to handle the matters of the Seong family and become the Seong family's patriarch in the future. The Seong clan was nurturing him as their future successor. After understanding these things, the Hu sisters immediately relaxed, but they were still worried about Hu-man's safety. The roasted game exuded a meaty aroma, and Yang Kai chewed without any scruples. The Hu sisters also couldn't resist the temptation and ate in a refined manner. This past month of following Yang Kai had been very difficult. As they ate and chatted, the atmosphere became harmonious and cheerful, especially when the remaining people thought that they would soon be able to return to the sect. Fang Ziki somehow managed to get some wine and started drinking with Yang Kai. Yang Kai didn't fear him and started to fight with him on the spot. While they were enjoying themselves, a group of people casually approached them from the darkness. Leading the group was a man and a woman. Both of them didn't look very old. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. This was especially so for that woman. Her figure was enchanting, and her tight clothes outlined her exquisite waist. Her top had no sleeves, and her 2 snow-white jade arms were exposed. Even in the dark of the night, one could clearly see the tender whiteness of her snow-white skin. The 2 people walked towards them with a strange smile on their face, followed by many people. When they were about 10 feet away, the man suddenly staggered and almost fell to the ground. Along with his movement, a large amount of sand flew out, covering the faces of the people from Blood Group and Stormhouse. Ouch! The man cried out in an exaggerated manner, as if he was in a hurry to stabilize his pace. The people from Blood Group and Stormhouse were laughing and eating, but who would have thought that such an unforeseen event would occur? Realizing that something was wrong, Guan Kaila casually waved his hand, but was unable to block all the sand. Surprisingly, there was some true essence hidden in the sand. Pu, everyone was hit by the sand, many of them felt a burning pain on their faces, even the wine and barbecued meat on the bonfire became dirty. Suddenly, most of the people from Blood Group and Stormhouse stood up, looking at the newcomer with unkind eyes. The man pretended to twist his waist, and with a frightened expression, he said, "I almost fell." The woman giggled and said, "Brother Xierong, how could you be so careless?" Xierong said, "Junior sister Li Fu doesn't know, but brother was watching the monkey play, and was careless and distracted." Li Fu covered her mouth and chuckled, looking around with an innocent face. She said, "Brother really knows how to joke, this late at night. Where did this monkey come from? How come junior sister didn't see it?" Xierong laughed, "Junior sister, your eyes are not good. This monkey not only knows how to play, but also knows how to eat meat and drink wine. Don't you think it's strange?" Li Fu was surprised. "Really, there is such a clever monkey under the heavens. Junior sister really wants to see it. Where is it? Where is it?" As she said this, her beautiful eyes looked towards the bonfire, a trace of contempt and disdain on her charming face. The 2 people were pointing at the mulberry tree and cursing the locust tree. How could the people from Blood Group and Stormhouse not understand? Their faces immediately became gloomy. Chapter 353. The people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall had not been doing well these days. Not only were they often assigned to the most dangerous positions in the battle against the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land, but even when they rested in this camp, they were often ridiculed. There were 5 or 6 forces gathered here, and with the exception of the Seong family, which was a first-class family, the others were all second- or third-class sects. These forces, in terms of combat strength and manpower, were almost the same as Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall. Some were even slightly inferior, but they still dared to throw stones at them. When they were in a good mood, they would mock them, but when they were in a bad mood, they would curse them. It was as if the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall owed them something. When Hu Man and Xiao Ruohan were still here, there were still some people who acted as deterrents, but now that they were gone, only the younger generation of disciples remained. Among them, the people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were the worst. These days, the people from Wind and Rain Road and Blood Battle Gang had been provoked and cursed at more than 2 or 3 times, but because many of their disciples had died, only a dozen or so had survived, they could only endure. Fang Ziki and his group were in the eye of the storm, so naturally they weren't willing to provoke any trouble. Enduring and retreating time and time again made the people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court think they were easy to bully. Today, seeing them lighting a bonfire, drinking and eating meat, how could they be willing to let go of such an opportunity? In any case, there was no war here, so if they didn't have some fun, how could they pass the long night? The dozen or so people from Storm Hall and Blood Battle Gang didn't affect Xie Rong and Li Fu in the slightest, both of them still wearing calm and disdainful smiles. It was as if they didn't put these people in their eyes at all, but the look in their eyes was also intriguing. Sit down. Guan Kaila's old face was gloomy as he rolled his eyes and ordered everyone. The dozen or so younger generation disciples gritted their teeth and clenched their fists, but they had no choice but to swallow their anger and slowly sit down. Although they were young and full of vigor, they also knew that if they really had a conflict with the other side, the ones who would suffer in the end would still be their group. Not to mention whether or not they could win in a real fight. Even if they won, they would be pursued by the Xiong family afterwards. At that time, the situation of the two sects would be even worse. The dozen or so people sat down one by one. Fang Ziki was the last to sit down. The smile on his face was rather sinister, and the flesh on his face was trembling. Even if his heart was filled with unhappiness, he had to endure it. Yang Kai's expression was calm. He shook off a few grains of dust from the barbecued meat on his hand and looked at the newcomer calmly. Some of these people were at the Yuan Qi realm, but many of them were at the separation and reunion realm. Their strength was not very high. However, Yang Kai's sharp senses told him that several strands of divine sense were currently covering the entire area. Two of them were vigilant and hostile. It should be Xie Rong and Li Fu's elders who were monitoring the situation here to prevent Guan Kaila from harming them. In addition, there were two other divine senses that were much more powerful. They were the divine senses of the two masters around Xiongchu. Noticing this, Yang Kai grinned and laughed silently. In the past, the members of Stormhouse and Blood Group had endured. Xie Rong and the others would not continue to provoke them, but today they were obviously not willing to give up. After the group of people sat back down, Xie Rong and Li Fu not only didn't leave but instead took 2 steps forward. Li Fu covered her mouth and smiled towards the Hu sisters. Opening her mouth, she asked, "Two little sisters, I trust you have been well since we last met. I heard that the two of you managed to escape from the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land. Elder sister is very curious. The Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land is filled with evil demons, and the two of you are so beautiful, attracting so much attention. How did you manage to escape?" Hu Jiaoer's brow furrowed slightly as she stared at Li Fu with some displeasure, asking lightly, "What do you want to say?" Li Fu giggled and said in a tender voice, "Elder sister is very curious about how 2 little sisters came back safely. If it is convenient, can you tell elder sister about it? For example, what kind of people did you meet along the way, what did you encounter, and how many times did you have to sell your bodies to be able to survive in the hands of those demons?" When Hu Jiaoer and Hu Maier heard this, their faces suddenly became gloomy. "Sorry, elder sister said the wrong thing," Li Fu chuckled. Although she apologized, her expression did not show the slightest hint of regret. The men behind her were now looking at the Hu sisters with strange gazes. It was as if they were looking at 2 pairs of broken shoes. Their gazes were filled with disdain, as well as unconcealable greed. "I'm also very curious." Xie Rong grinned. "Not only are we curious, everyone here is curious about what kind of method the two of you used to come back alive from that place." Hu Jiaoer's face was gloomy, her chest heaving up and down, but suddenly she smiled and said, "What does this have to do with you?" "Naturally, it has to do with us." Li Fu chuckled. "If the two of you didn't rely on selling your body to escape safely from that place, then you must have colluded with the evil demons there, otherwise why would they let you go? Perhaps you are the eyes of those evil demons here. If you are spies of the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land, then there must be someone monitoring you." "That's right." Xie Rong's expression suddenly became cold, his eyes suddenly turning to Yang Kai, staring at him fiercely. "This friend looks unfamiliar, where did you come from?" Yang Kai, who was eating, couldn't help but furrow his brow when he heard this question. Only then did he realize that this group of people had come for him. The previous provocation was all just a setup. It's not convenient to say. Shaking his head, Yang Kai said indifferently. Is it because you don't dare, or is it not convenient to say? Li Fu also asked with a sneer. Xie Rong calmly stared at the Hu sisters. He was brought here by the two of you. You should be clear about his origins, right? I don't know, we met on the road. Hu Jiao shook her head. How could they casually talk about Yang Kai's origin? Storm Hall's Blood Battle gang had suffered a great disaster just because they were next door to High Heaven Pavilion. If they told them about Yang Kai's master, there was no telling what kind of chaos would ensue. Casually fabricating a background would be even more unreliable, and they would likely be exposed on the spot. Sure enough, there's a problem. Xie Rong shouted, waving his hand. Capture them. Who dares? Fang Ziki shouted, standing up as a majestic yuan qi erupted from his body. As soon as he moved, the others immediately moved, all of them staring vigilantly at the people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. The latter naturally wouldn't back down, drawing their weapons and secretly urging their yuan qi. In an instant, the atmosphere was tense. Heh. Xie Rong grinned. You dare to shelter someone from the ash-grey cloud evil land? You're all dead. Xie Rong's smile was quite strange, as if his plan had succeeded, but his smile soon faded and he quickly shouted, Begin. As soon as his voice fell, the two divine senses entrenched in the ground suddenly transformed into sharp attacks filled with killing intent that rushed straight towards Yang Kai's mind. Realizing the situation was bad, Guan Kaila's complexion changed greatly as he shouted, Be careful. The two silent attacks broke into Yang Kai's mind, but before they could penetrate, they lost their bearings. Yang Kai's expression sank as his eyes became cold. He had thought that this group of people was just trying to provoke him, but now it seemed that was obviously not the case. Following the direction of the two attacking divine senses, a purple light flashed across the night sky. A bone-piercing chill suddenly spread out before disappearing without a trace, causing everyone present to wonder if they had experienced some kind of illusion. Two muffled sounds rang out not far away, and the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court both paled, their eyes instantly becoming bloodshot as they nearly fell to the ground. At that moment, both of them were simultaneously attacked by a strange soul skill. This strange soul skill was mixed with a large amount of evil and frigid coldness, almost freezing their knowledge seas. Fortunately, they sensed something was wrong and immediately counterattacked, otherwise the consequences would have been unimaginable. Quickly recovering, the two of them glanced at each other and saw the horror and panic in each other's eyes. Outside, Yang Kai had already moved. After using his soul skill to counterattack the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, Yang Kai's figure flashed like a gust of wind, instantly arriving in front of Xie Rong. Xie Rong's expression hadn't yet disappeared when a big hand grabbed his neck and sent out a wave of hot true yang yuan qi, causing Xie Rong's neck to burn painfully. Just as Xie Rong let out a pitiful cry, a fist smashed into his eyes, instantly causing him to become dizzy and unable to see anything. Ah! Li Fu's pretty face paled, never having expected that Yang Kai would actually be able to survive the attack of two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. Before she had time to react, Yang Kai's other hand also grabbed her slender neck. Both hands simultaneously pushed towards the middle, Xie Rong and Li Fu slammed into each other, and under the tremendous force and speed, both of them felt half of their bodies go numb. The yuan qi they had hurriedly circulated was also forced back by this collision. Both of them were elites from their respective sects, but at this moment, in front of Yang Kai, they were as fragile as two children, unable to resist at all. Peng peng. Both of them were thrown to the ground like meteors, leaving two human-shaped craters in the ground as the sound of bones breaking rang out, followed by a series of pitiful screams. It wasn't until this moment that everyone present finally recovered. Shua. The disciples of Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court all stared vigilantly at Yang Kai, each of them preparing their own moves. Who dares move? Yang Kai stomped his foot on Li Fu's beautiful face, pressing half of her face into the dirt, this violent and barbaric action causing everyone's eyelids to twitch. In his other hand, yuan qi condensed into a solid yuan qi, like a dagger, and pressed against Xie Rong's chest. Under the darkness of the night, the flickering bonfire illuminated Yang Kai's gloomy face, making him look extremely terrifying. The people from Storm Hall and Blood Battle Gang were all dumbfounded, standing in place, their faces filled with disbelief. Who dares move? Fang Ziki was the first to recover, angrily shouting as he threw a jug of wine onto the bonfire. With a loud crash, under the influence of alcohol, the bonfire was like a fire dragon, soaring several meters into the sky, making the scene even more intense. Chapter 354. As the bonfire flickered and crackled, countless pairs of eyes focused on Yang Kai. Worry, surprise, shock, horror, humiliation, anger, all kinds of emotions were revealed. Among the Thunder Light Sect's people, a young man stepped forward and stared at Yang Kai with an ugly expression. "This friend, if you have something to say, can we talk it out? Can you release her first?" The people from Soaring Rainbow Court also immediately responded, someone shouting, "Release Senior Sister Li Fu." She was a proud daughter of the heavens within her own sect, a figure that was looked up to and admired by countless fellow disciples. At this moment, her face that was like a flower was actually being stepped on by someone with a smelly foot. How could those young people from the Soaring Rainbow Court be able to endure this? This was blasphemy. This was an insult. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes, a cold light flashing across his eyes as he grinned. "What do you say? We didn't do anything to you, friend. Don't you think you've gone too far?" The young man from Thunder Light Sect replied humbly. "Interesting." Yang Kai grinned, tilting his head and looking towards Guan Kai-le. "Senior, what do you think?" Of all the people present, except for Guan Kai-le, who was an Immortal Ascension Boundary Master, none of them had reached the Immortal Ascension Boundary, so naturally they weren't aware of the danger just now. The two soul skill attacks from the Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court's masters had been silent. If it weren't for Yang Kai having cultivated his divine sense and also having a defensive soul skill, he would likely have died by now. In the eyes of others, just because Xierong had shouted, Yang Kai had taken the initiative to attack, and his approach was quite barbaric and overbearing. But the actual situation was only clear to Yang Kai and Guan Kai-le. Guan Kai-le was also slightly stunned, not understanding how Yang Kai was able to remain unscathed. Hearing Yang Kai's question, Guan Kai-le quickly stood up, his expression no longer as casual as before as he stared at Yang Kai with a dignified expression. Narrowing his eyes and pondering for a moment, Guan Kai-le sneered, "This is intolerable. Haha, what Senior said is right." Yang Kai laughed. The foot that was stepping on Li Fu's face increased in strength. "You! How dare you treat me like this?" Li Fu screamed. As soon as the words left her mouth, she immediately ate a mouthful of sand. Her pretty face was devoid of color, and her eyes were filled with humiliation and unwillingness. Her strength was not very high, and her aptitude was also not very good. However, in a second-class sect like Soaring Rainbow Court, her status was already considered quite good. Coupled with her beautiful appearance, naturally she could get wind and rain whenever she wanted. She was also quite proud and arrogant. Except for Xiong Chu, she had never put any other man in her eyes. When had she ever suffered such humiliation? Feeling the sand in her mouth and imagining herself being stepped on, Li Fu almost fainted. "Shut up." Yang Kai glanced at her indifferently. "Fuck you." Xierong was obviously unwilling to be controlled by others. The moment he opened his mouth, he started cursing. Before he could even utter a single word, he opened his mouth wide and welcomed Yang Kai's fist. With a bang, the second half of Xierong's sentence was swallowed back into his stomach. 5 or 6 teeth fell out of his mouth, and in an instant, his mouth was full of blood. A look of panic filled his face. He no longer dared to speak. "Stop." It wasn't until this moment that the two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court rushed over. After the two of them were attacked by Yang Kai's soul skill, they immediately realized that the situation was not good and quickly rushed over, but still failed to arrive in time. ******* The two of them appeared 10 meters in front of Yang Kai at the same time, staring at him coldly and vigilantly. Guan Kai-le quietly moved his body, placing himself in the middle of the room. Yang Kai raised his eyes and calmly stared at the two newcomers. The strength of these two wasn't very high, even lower than Guan Kai Le, only Immortal Ascension Boundary second stage masters. After all, the real masters had already been transferred away. The ones who remained were only there to look after the younger generation. There was no need for them to be too strong. The three of them stared at each other, the atmosphere heavy and awkward. After a long time, the two of them glanced over at Xie Rong, whose mouth was covered in blood, and Li Fu, whose face was half buried in the dirt. Their old faces couldn't help blushing slightly. Their juniors being bullied like this was a loss of face for them. What's more, this was a situation where the two of them had launched a sneak attack first, making them seem even more incompetent. Thank you for your advice. The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Thunder Light Sect said. Same here. Yang Kai replied in a lukewarm manner. The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Soaring Rainbow Court coughed dryly and hesitantly said, Young man, let them go first, it's not good to see them like this. That's your business, it has nothing to do with me. The man's face sank slightly. Why do you have to be like this? The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Thunder Light Sect also wore a disgruntled expression, coldly saying, Young man, for what happened just now, these two old masters will apologize to you. How about you let them go first? You need to know when to leave a line for others in the future. His words were ambiguous, so the others thought he was apologizing because of Xie Rong and Li Fu's rudeness, but Yang Kai knew he was referring to the sneak attack on him. Grinning widely, Yang Kai replied, There are some things that can't be solved by apologizing. What do you want? The Thunder Light Sect Master's face suddenly sank. Although he knew Yang Kai wasn't simple, there was no need for him to fear him. Right now, because Xie Rong and Li Fu's lives were in the hands of this young man, he had no choice but to lower his pride. For him, this was already his limit. I don't want to do anything. Yang Kai sneered, the yuan qi in his hand pulsing like a poisonous snake, extremely dangerous. What he wanted to figure out the most right now was why these two people wanted to kill him. He had just returned here with the Hu sisters today, so there was no reason for him to suddenly attract such murderous intent. Directly asking them would definitely not give him an answer, but Yang Kai vaguely felt that this matter was a bit strange. Perhaps it was because someone was competing with him for his affection. This old master advises you to release them quickly, otherwise you will regret it for the rest of your life. The Thunder Light Sect Master was too proud to continue arguing with Yang Kai. As he spoke, his yuan qi began to fluctuate, as if it would immediately attack Yang Kai if he didn't release them. Are you threatening me? Yang Kai frowned, a trace of hostility appearing on his face. You can think of it that way. The Thunder Light Sect Master replied coldly. What about you? Yang Kai turned his gaze to the Soaring Rainbow Court Master, his eyes flashing dangerously. The man simply snorted. He didn't say anything, obviously he had the same intention. Good. Yang Kai nodded slightly, his expression suddenly becoming ferocious, the yuan qi in his hands instantly pulsing as he attacked Xie Rong and Li Fu's shoulders. Accompanied by two crisp sounds, Xie Rong and Li Fu's faces suddenly paled, and then screams came from their mouths. Both of them had their arms broken. You! The faces of the Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court's masters changed greatly as they stared at Yang Kai in horror and disbelief, never having expected him to be so crazy. Guan Kai Le also looked at him like he was a madman. His expression was strange. All the young men were the same. Yang Kai's expression was cold as he glanced at the two men, his eyes filled with contempt and disdain. Coldly snorting, he said, Next time, I will hit them in the chest. You dare. The Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court Masters were furious. If they really were hit in the chest, how could Xie Rong and Li Fu survive? You can try. Yang Kai smiled contemptuously. The two couldn't help feeling slightly stunned. They didn't see the slightest hesitation or fear on Yang Kai's face, nor did they hear any threat or joke in his tone. What he said was the truth. Only now did the two understand that this young man in front of them was not afraid of them at all, otherwise he wouldn't have acted so decisively. Moreover, with his personality, he was someone who could be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force, so the threats of the two had obviously angered him. Tell us. What will it take for you to give up? The Soaring Rainbow Court's Immortal Ascension Boundary Master took a deep breath and asked. You can't give me the answer I want. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully, his eyes shifting slightly as he stared towards a certain spot in the darkness. In that direction, Xiongchu couldn't help pinching his nose. His elegant face suddenly showed an interesting grin. Young Master. The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master behind him couldn't help frowning. Is he looking at you? Ian. Xiongchu nodded gently. He knows I'm here. How did he know? This young man's intuition is too sharp. Perhaps. Xiongchu also had a strange feeling in his heart, but he didn't have a better explanation, so he thought about it for a moment. Smiling freely, he took the lead and walked out. A moment later, he arrived at the scene of the incident and called out to Chu Yang, "What happened? Why did I hear the sound of fighting?" It seemed that the person in charge had appeared, so the tense atmosphere between the two sides suddenly eased a lot. However, the disciples from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall couldn't help feeling worried, while the disciples from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were gloating. They all felt that Yang Kai's blatant attack on Xie Rong and Li Fu would definitely result in him being held accountable and punished. Young Master Xiong. The three Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters present quickly saluted Xiongchu. Xiongchu just nodded faintly and smiled gently towards the Hu sisters. Xie Rong and Li Fu also scrambled to shout, "Young Master Xiong, help us. This person wants to kill us." Before they could finish their words, Yang Kai swung his hand and sent out 2 slaps. The 2 slaps were loud and harsh in the dark night. Xiongchu couldn't help but frown slightly as he stared at Yang Kai from a distance of more than a dozen meters. There was a faint displeasure in his eyes, but he quickly concealed it. Young Master Xiong, the situation is like this. The Thunder Light Sect's master quickly stepped forward and reported what had just happened. Xiongchu, on the other hand, raised his hand and swept his eyes over the crowd before finally settling on Hu Mai. Tell me, what happened? Hu Mai was so concerned about Yang Kai that she didn't care about the way Xiongchu called her and immediately explained what had just happened. Is that so? After listening to her, Xiongchu turned to the people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court and asked. These people hesitated for a moment, not knowing how to answer, only able to turn their eyes to their respective elders. Xiongchu sneered, "What's wrong? This young lord's question, is no one going to answer?" Everyone quickly lowered their heads and replied in unison, "Yes." Xiongchu smiled and said, "Since that's the case, then Xie Rong and Li Fu were in the wrong. Although we are all from different sects, since we are all here, we are all part of the resistance against the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land, so we should help each other. You provoked others first, so it is only natural for this friend to teach you a lesson. You can't blame anyone for being inferior, so why don't you hurry up and apologize to Storm Hall and Blood Battle Gang?" Chapter 355. Apologize. When the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court heard this, they couldn't help but be stunned. The other juniors were also stunned and stared at Xiongchu in confusion. Yang Kai's eyes flashed as an inexplicable smile appeared on his face. Young Master Xiong. Xie Rong had lost several of his teeth, so when he spoke, he couldn't help but shout out in humiliation. He had hoped that Xiongchu would stand up for him and uphold justice, but as soon as he saw the fierce look in Xiongchu's eyes, he quickly swallowed his words back down. Smiling warmly, Xiongchu turned to Yang Kai and cupped his fists. This Xiongchu has failed in his management, causing Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall to suffer such grievances. Now that you've vented your anger, this Xiongchu will act as a mediator. Friends, where possible, let's be lenient. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, but Xiongchu can guarantee that something like this will never happen again. While smiling, Xiongchu cupped his fists and apologized, his words sincere, expression sincere, and attitude friendly, as if he really was the one who had made a mistake. Xiongchu's sudden humility surprised everyone present. The younger generation of Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall suddenly felt proud and elated, their hearts filled with joy. They didn't know that Yang Kai had just encountered a moment ago and only thought that this was just an ordinary fight. Xie Rong and Li Fu, who had always ridiculed them, had now suffered a big loss, and now Xiong Chu was siding with them. How could they not be satisfied? Only Fang Ziki and the Hu sisters stared at Yang Kai thoughtfully, faintly feeling that something was wrong. Separated by a few dozen meters, Yang Kai stared at Xiong Chu with a scorching gaze. It wasn't until this moment that he truly understood what it meant to be extremely shrewd. What happened just now had been monitored by the two masters behind Xiong Chu with their divine senses. Xiong Chu himself had also seen everything clearly from a short distance away, but he still pretended not to know anything and walked over to ask. This person really was a hypocrite. A hypocrite with a silver tongue. Is there anything this friend is not satisfied with? If you have any requests, don't hesitate to apologize. Xiong Chu said with a smile. Young Lord Xiong upholding justice, naturally I am satisfied. Yang Kai grinned. That's good. That's good. Xiong Chu said with a relieved expression as he laughed happily. Let's turn big things into small ones. We're all fellow Taoists, so there's no need to keep targeting each other. You should know that our enemy is the ash-grey cloud evil land. Friend, please release these people first, they really are an eyesore. Okay. Yang Kai nodded and threw out his feet. With two bangs, Xie Rong and Li Fu flew back to their respective camps like ragged sacks. Their respective elders caught them and threw them out. He broke a few more of their ribs. Xiong Chu's eyes couldn't help narrowing, but Yang Kai simply smiled back at him, not showing any signs of fear. Little brat. Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court's Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters angrily shouted. Apologize. Yang Kai turned his head and looked at them. His eyes were as cold as the cold wind, and his tone was unquestionable. Their faces were filled with anger. Glaring furiously, Yang Kai turned his gaze towards Xiong Chu, causing the latter's face to twitch slightly before he nodded. Seeing Xiong Chu's gesture, even if the two were unwilling in their hearts, they had no choice but to swallow their pride. In a muffled voice, Xiong Chu said, "For what happened just now, I apologize to the Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall brothers. This old master will strictly discipline his disciples and won't allow them to provoke us again." Scram. Yang Kai sneered. Let's go. The Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court masters each carried Xie Rong and Li Fu, leading a group of extremely sullen young disciples away. After they left, Xiong Chu turned to the Hu sisters and smiled gently before politely withdrawing. Around the bonfire, after a long silence, the disciples of Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall burst into laughter and stared at Yang Kai in awe, all of them regarding him as a hero. Although the people here belonged to the three great sects, since they had come here, there was no difference between sects. Everyone had worked together and had long since been twisted into a rope. Yang Kai's strong display of strength had caused all of them to feel excited. Only Guan Kai Le had a frown on his face, looking somewhat worried. The Hu sisters quietly stepped forward and Hu Jiaoer whispered, "What happened just now?" "It's nothing." Yang Kai shook his head gently. What happened just now, those who knew would have a tacit understanding, there was no need to expose it. Fang Ziki also came up and although he had some doubts in his heart, he didn't ask much and just said, "Shall we continue drinking?" "Come." Yang Kai smiled. Inside Xiong Chu's house. The masters of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court had already settled the injured Xie Rong and Li Fu and arrived. The door opened, and Xiong Chu Feng walked in with great haste. He sat down on a chair, and the two guardians behind him stood silently on either side of him. "Greetings, young Master Xiong." The masters of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court hurriedly saluted, their expressions filled with anger. Xiong Chu glanced at them faintly and asked with a chuckle, "Tell me, what happened just now? Why is that little brat still alive and kicking?" The masters of Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court glanced at each other and explained what had just happened. After listening to their explanation, Xiong Chu narrowed his eyes and asked, "You mean to say that not only was your soul skill blocked by him, but you were also injured by his soul skill?" The two men's faces turned red as they braced themselves and nodded. The master of Thunderlight Sect quickly added, "I know this reason is a bit far-fetched, but this is the truth, please understand, young Master Xiong." "I know, I don't doubt you." Xiong Chu nodded lightly before suddenly turning to the two masters behind him and asking, "What do you think?" One of them said, "If that's the case, that young man must have a high-grade soul-type artifact on him." The other said, "It's also possible that he has two. One for defense and one for attack, otherwise, with his current realm, it would have been impossible for him to use his soul skill." Xiong Chu nodded slightly, "I think so too." Suddenly, he smiled brilliantly. "Interesting, he actually has a soul-type artifact on him. That's not something an ordinary person can possess." The eyes of the Thunder Light sect's master became cold. Quietly asking, "Young Master Xiong, do you want us to? Do you have the ability?" Xiong Chu coldly snorted. "As long as we can entangle Guan Kai Le, we have full confidence we can take that little brat's head. No need, we've already alerted the enemy." Xiong Chu slowly shook his head, his expression somewhat unpleasant. "Yes. Right, how are Xie Rong and Li Fu's injuries?" Xiong Chu asked with concern. The Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court gratefully replied, "That little brat's attack was very heavy. But at least he left them some leeway and didn't take their lives. They should be able to recover after a few days of rest." Xiong Chu nodded. Then he motioned to the guardians behind him. One of them casually tossed a bottle to the two masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. Xiong Chu said, "This is a special healing pill from my Xiong family. After you return, give it to them with warm water. They should be able to recover in 10 days or so." "Many thanks, young Lord Xiong." The two masters were overjoyed and repeatedly thanked him. "Go back." Xiong Chu waved his hand and the two quickly withdrew. "Young Master." After the masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court left, one of the old men behind Xiong Chu hesitated for a moment before asking, "Why were you so polite to that young man? That little brat really isn't simple, but he's not worth you swallowing such humiliation." Xiong Chu smiled lightly and slowly got up. "The first time I saw him, I knew he was very strong. Didn't you notice that he was completely fearless today? Even when the two of you appeared, his momentum was still fierce. With such an indifferent expression, that little brat is obviously not an ordinary person. I can't see through him, so for the time being, I don't want to make a move on him. But in a few days, once the decisive battle is over, we should return. We should go back now. Young Master, aren't you determined to get the Hu sisters?" Xiong Chu smiled and nodded. So before we return, we must resolve this matter, otherwise, it will be difficult for us to meet again in the future." Today's matter. It was also because the Hu sisters were quite close to Yang Kai that Xiong Chu wanted to get rid of Yang Kai, so he had sent Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court to provoke him. After killing Yang Kai, he would punish Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court so the Hu sisters would naturally feel grateful. Unexpectedly, things didn't go as planned and Yang Kai turned out to be so tyrannical. Stretching his waist, Xiong Chu said, "That's all for now, this young lord is going to rest first." The two guardians glanced at each other, neither of them understanding what their young master was thinking. Tonight's action had been so urgent, but now he seemed indifferent. They really didn't know what he was planning to do. For the next 10 days, everything was peaceful. Although the confrontation with the ash-grey cloud evil land continued, whether it was on one side or the other, everyone's mind was focused on the final battle, so it was impossible to fight. After Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court suffered a big loss that night, they didn't dare to provoke anyone again. Even the people from the other forces, when they saw Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall at this moment, would take a detour. Yang Kai had been in retreat all this time. It was rare for him to have such a quiet cultivation environment where he wouldn't be disturbed by external affairs, so naturally he wouldn't slack off. After half a month of cultivation, his Yuan Qi 6th-stage cultivation had been consolidated again and again, and he wasn't far from breaking through to the Yuan Qi 7th stage. Half a month later, Hu Jiao and Hu Maya rushed into Kai Yang's secluded retreat. "What's wrong?" Yang Kai looked at the two sisters and asked. "We have to go out for a while." Hu Jiao smiled sweetly. Xiong Chu said that this is our last mission and that after we complete it, we can go home. When it came to going home, the two sisters were quite excited. "I'll go with you," Yang Kai said and stood up. Hu Jiao's expression darkened as she quickly said, "You can't go." "Huh?" Hu Mai'er said, "Your identity is unknown. If you go with us, it will only make others suspicious." Hu Jiao nodded slightly. "Thanks to Xierong, many people now suspect that you are a spy from the ash-grey cloud evil land." Yang Kai's brow wrinkled slightly as he looked at them thoughtfully. "How many people will go out this time?" "All of them will go. Only a few people will stay behind to guard this place. You will also stay here and wait for us to come back. If it's short, it will be half a day. If it's long, it will be 2 to 3 days." Hu Jiao laughed. "When this mission is completed, elder sister will take you home." Chapter 356. Taifang Mountain, atop a ridge. More than 100 cultivators were scattered around, vigilantly and carefully lying in ambush. According to Xiong Chu, the spies on the other side of Taifang Mountain had sent back accurate information that a group of ash-grey cloud evil land cultivator would arrive today to launch a final sneak attack. Therefore, he had ordered his people to lie in ambush here and prepare to intercept the enemy forces. Originally, the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall were skeptical about this news. After all, both sides had been at peace for so long, so why would the ash-grey cloud evil land suddenly attack at the last moment? However, as time passed, and a group of cultivators really sneaked in, their doubts were dispelled. There weren't many people, only about 60 to 70 of them. Among them, the number of Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters was quite small. Under Xiong Chu's effective arrangement and command, the ash-grey cloud evil land invaders were forced to throw away their helmets and flee in panic, suffering heavy casualties. This battle didn't last long, only about half a day's worth of time. When the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall returned victorious and gathered, they found that many cultivators were missing from the crowd. Taking a closer look, they found that the missing people were all from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. Everyone realized that something was wrong. Xiong Chu. Hu Jiao went straight to the Xiong family's young lord and calmly asked, "Where are Xierong and Li Fu?" Xiong Chu was slightly startled and suspiciously asked, "Didn't they go with you to hunt down the enemy?" "No." Hu Jiao's face went cold. "I haven't seen them since the beginning of the battle." "What?" Xiong Chu's expression also changed, frowning for a moment. Staring at Hu Jiao in horror, he said, "That means, we're in trouble, quickly return." As he spoke, he hastily led a group of people back. Hu Jiao stared at his back and grit her teeth, but there was nothing she could do, so she and her sister could only increase their speed to the limit. They madly retreated. The people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court suddenly disappeared. Their whereabouts were obvious. It wasn't that Hu Jiao wasn't worried that these two families would find trouble with Yang Kai, but because this time, everyone had participated in this operation. Moreover, the two families' forces were under her nose and she could monitor their movements at any time, so Hu Jiao wasn't too worried. Who knew that they would disappear after the battle started? By the time he realized it, it was already too late. Now it seems. Today's mission was most likely a premeditated trap. Anxious, Hu Jiao and Hu Mai'er both activated their twin chi shared spirit divine art, and their speed suddenly doubled. Two beautiful figures flew past Xiong Chu like two meteors. Xiong Chu's eyes couldn't help narrowing slightly as he stared at the Hu sisters with some surprise, seemingly not having expected them to be so strong. In the camp, Yang Kai sat cross-legged on his bed, circulating his true Yang secret art, as if he was silently waiting for something. He did not have to wait long. After the Hu sisters left, in less than a day and night, the divine sense that was spread out detected an abnormal movement. She opened her eyes, which were shining brightly. A cold smile appeared on her face as she softly muttered to herself, "Have they come?" Ever since he found out that Hu Jiao and the others were going out to carry out a mission, he had been extremely worried. Yang Kai realized that someone had come to deal with him. Among the people here, except for the two masters from the Xiong family, Yang Kai was not afraid of anyone. It was impossible for the two masters from the Xiong family to make a move. They had to follow Xiong Chu at all times to prevent any accidents, so even if Yang Kai understood the current situation, he had no intention of leaving. Shua Shua Shua, The sound of clothes fluttering could be heard all around. The people who had come had no intention of hiding, so they openly surrounded the place where Yang Kai was. After a while, everything returned to calm, and only a faint murderous intent and hostility could be felt. "Since you've come, there's no need to hide," Yang Kai shouted loudly, standing up and waving his fists in all directions. Fist shadows filled the sky, and the house he was in collapsed with a loud boom. Dust flew everywhere, and smoke filled the air. After the dust had settled, the figures of the people around him entered his eyes. Xie Rong from Thunder Light Sect and Li Fu from Soaring Rainbow Court stared at Yang Kai with eyes filled with deep hatred. That night, both of them had suffered a big loss at Yang Kai's hands and had been severely humiliated. Even now, Xie Rong didn't dare to open his mouth, lest others see his ugly appearance with broken teeth. There were a total of 30 to 40 people from the two factions, and except for the two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters he had met that night, the rest were all disciples of the younger generation. A triumphant laugh sounded as Xie Rong shouted, "Little brat, let's see if you die this time." Li Fu also sneered, "I'll make you pay the price. No one has ever treated me like this before." The two of them had been seriously injured, but with the help of the pills given by their elders and Xiong Chu, they had basically fully recovered after half a month. Knowing that this time they could come to Yang Kai without any worries, the two of them naturally couldn't wait to take revenge. "You're not good, too weak." Yang Kai sneered contemptuously, the disdain on his face obvious. Xie Rong and Li Fu both blushed at the same time, unable to help recalling the scene when they were completely powerless against Yang Kai that night, their self-confidence suddenly taking a hit. "Young man, you're too arrogant." The Thunder Light Sect's master coldly snorted and stepped forward, staring at Yang Kai indifferently. "With these two old masters here, do you think you can still get away scot-free today?" Yang Kai chuckled, tilting his head as he looked at these two and asked casually, "All of this was instigated by Xiong Chu, right? Including that night's events?" The two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters both sneered but didn't answer. Yang Kai already had a plan in mind, nodding casually. "What benefits did he give you that you want to offend me like this?" The Thunder Light Sect's master sneered, "Who do you think you are? After today, you'll be nothing but a pile of bones, so what if we offend you?" Yang Kai's eyes flashed a cold light as he grinned, "The price of offending me, I'm afraid you won't be able to afford it." As soon as his voice fell, a purple light suddenly rushed out from his mind. Soul skill. Scatter. Their attacks were fierce, their Yuan Qi dispersed like a fog, enveloping Yang Kai, each of them ruthlessly attacking, not leaving him any room to maneuver. The two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters were also quite sullen. When an Immortal Ascension Boundary Master faced an Yuan Qi Master, their greatest advantage was their soul skills, but in front of Yang Kai, not only did they not dare to use them, they also had to guard against his soul attacks, so the depression in their hearts could be imagined. The battle between the three was exceptionally fierce. Although Kai Yang was at an absolute disadvantage, being completely suppressed by the two masters, a single true element boundary cultivator being able to withstand the attacks of two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters, just this point alone was shocking enough. Xie Rong and Li Fu watched on with pale faces, suddenly realizing that they had been captured by Yang Kai that night not because they had been careless or negligent, but because the other party really did have the ability to do so. Even if they were vigilant now, they would never be able to escape Yang Kai's attacks. What kind of freak is this? How could he be so powerful? Xie Rong's mouth was filled with bitterness, his face filled with disbelief. Li Fu's face was pale and she had completely lost the ability to speak, her beautiful eyes trembling violently as she regretted provoking such a person. His strength and terror had already exceeded Li Fu's imagination. Even her original desire for revenge had been diluted by quite a bit in an instant. Now, Li Fu could only hope that the two elders could severely injure or even kill Yang Kai on the spot, otherwise, she would never be able to live in peace. Chapter 357. With a wave of heat rolling around him, Yang Kai's true Yang Yuan Qi had been pushed to the extreme, and he had also displayed his full strength, but he was still unable to fight against two Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters at the same time. With a bang, His chest was struck by the two immortal ascension boundary masters at the same time. Yang Kai's face paled slightly as he was sent flying backwards, his back slamming into a nearby tree, breaking it in half before he finally landed. Good. Xie Rong was extremely nervous and couldn't help shouting, as if he had contributed to Yang Kai's injury. The masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court flew down and stood a few dozen meters in front of Yang Kai, their expressions gloomy as they stared at him. Although Yang Kai had been injured by them, both of them knew that this kind of injury was nothing to him. The Yuan Qi in this young man's body was incredibly pure and strong, enough to resist and resolve at least 80% of their attacks. But in any case, both of them were satisfied with this result. Two immortal ascension boundary masters joining forces to bully a single Yuan Qi master. If they couldn't win, then they would really lose face. Little brat, show this old master your arrogance. The Thunder Light Sect master shouted with a gloomy expression. The Soaring Rainbow Court master also glared at Yang Kai coldly and shouted, "You killed so many of our two sect's disciples, today we'll make you pay this debt in blood." Heh heh heh. Yang Kai slowly stood up, and although his appearance was a bit miserable and isolated, he still grinned as he reached out and wiped the blood from his mouth, raising his eyes to stare at the two immortal ascension boundary masters in front of him, his eyes burning with fighting spirit. Immortal ascension boundary. Really extraordinary. Yang Kai's voice was slightly low, but his tone was calm and steady. The two people opposite him frowned slightly. They didn't understand why he still looked so calm and unafraid at this time. With a cold expression, the Thunder Light Sect master said, "Little brat, even though you've killed so many of our two sect's disciples. But this old master doesn't want to take your life. If you cripple your own cultivation, we can spare your life." Yang Kai grinned, "If you kill me, Xiongchu won't have any bargaining chips to use, right?" The two immortal ascension boundary masters narrowed their eyes at the same time. They were secretly surprised that Yang Kai's perception was so keen. Yang Kai had killed so many of their disciples. If they could decide, how could they spare Yang Kai's life? But Xiongchu's order was to cripple Kai Yang. Of course, Yang Kai. Of course, he had a use for Yang's life. Yang Kai, Yang, and Yang Kai of Yang of the Great of Rainbow Court? Yang of Yang's, Yang Kai's sect, and Soaring Rainbow Court's, Yang of Heaven's. Soaring Rainbow Court's expert also shouted coldly, "Why aren't you making a move yet?" Good. Yang Kai nodded firmly, his white fangs flashing as he glared at the two immortal ascension boundary masters. "You're willing to be Xiongchu's dogs. You can only blame yourselves for that. Little beast, you don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." The Thunder Light Sect master roared. "Do you really think two immortal ascension boundary second stage masters can eat me?" Yang Kai's expression suddenly became cold as he slowly raised his hand. Accompanied by this action, the Yuan Qi which had been surrounding him suddenly disappeared. The two immortal ascension boundary masters didn't know what he was doing, but they faintly felt that something was wrong. Hurriedly glancing at each other, they didn't want to waste any more time and quickly rushed forward. Yang Kai's eyes narrowed slightly as he gently tapped his forehead with his middle finger and whispered in a dreamy voice. This light voice seemed to contain a kind of magical power, like the clear sound of a drum that rang out between the heavens and earth. "Become the demon race. Hong. The entire world seemed to tremble. The earth trembled and the sky began to spin as an incomparable demonic chi suddenly spread out in all directions. This demonic aura was so pure and tyrannical that wherever it swept, a chill rose from the bottom of everyone's heart. The ruthlessness hidden in everyone's heart seemed to be drawn by this aura, and all kinds of evil surged into their hearts. The wind and clouds changed, and the heavens and earth trembled. At this moment, Yang Kai seemed to have undergone some kind of change. Before the two masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court had even reached him, their faces suddenly changed dramatically as they let out a strange cry and simultaneously flew backwards. Deng 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 deng. After retreating a dozen steps, the two immortal ascension boundary masters hurriedly regained their footing and stared at Yang Kai in horror, their expressions extremely dignified. The young man in front of them looked no different from before, almost exactly the same, but his temperament and aura were completely different. and the degree of vitality he exuded was also very different. If the previous Yangkai had made them feel troubled, then the current Yangkai made them feel a sense of danger. Fatal danger. Both of them were immortal ascension boundary masters and had keen senses. Although they didn't know how a person could undergo such a big change in an instant, their subconscious kept warning them that if they fought with this young man at this time, they would most likely die. Wild beasts had their own instincts and intuition. There were also masters who were more accurate than wild beasts. As soon as this thought popped up in their minds, both of them were startled. Why would a trivial Yuan Qi 6th-stage cultivator give them such an uneasy feeling? Moreover, this demonic Qi was something that even the 6 great evil kings of the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land did not possess. Before the 2 immortal ascension boundary masters could calm down, a series of crackling sounds rang out. Looking around, they saw that with Yangkai as the center, a layer of ice Qi visible to the naked eye was rapidly spreading outwards. Wherever this ice Qi passed, the earth was instantly frozen. In just a few breaths of time, the ground within a radius of several dozen meters had been completely frozen. The 2 immortal ascension boundary masters retreated again and again, their faces filled with panic. This kind of ice Qi was not ordinary, it seemed to be able to freeze even their Yuan Qi, so how could they dare to touch it? The eyes of the younger generation disciples trembled violently as they watched all this happen in horror. The second time he had become the demon race, the feeling was still as wonderful as ever. Yangkai shook his neck and arms. A series of popping sounds rang out. In addition to his face, Yangkai's entire body was covered in black lines. These lines were complex and mysterious, showing a mysterious pattern that was invisible to others. Little brat, you really are from the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Land. Lei Guang's immortal ascension boundary master seemed to have discovered some kind of secret. He shouted in horror and excitement. Whatever you say. Yangkai was in high spirits as he slowly raised his hand and pointed it towards the 2 immortal ascension boundary masters. Suddenly, he pressed his hand down. Obviously nothing had happened, but when the 2 immortal ascension boundary masters were pressed down, they felt a mountain-like pressure descend from the sky. Under this pressure, the 2 immortal ascension boundary masters' strength seemed to be shrouded and their Yuan Qi circulation was no longer as fast as before, their movements also becoming much slower. Asterisk shio shio shio, asterisk the sound of something breaking through the air rang out. The 2 immortal ascension boundary masters looked forward and were immediately shocked to the core. They saw Yangkai shoot out a series of jet black Qi towards them. Those attacks were like serpents of flesh and blood that suddenly opened their ferocious mouths in midair. Shaking their heads and tails, baring their fangs, they moved at an extremely fast speed. Asterisk catcher, asterisk wherever these attacks passed, the strong winds brought about by them plowed out one clearly visible gully after another on the ground, causing dirt and debris to fly everywhere. The scene was chaotic. The incomparably ferocious attack contained an ice-cold and sharp energy. It was invincible, and it almost destroyed everything in its path as it attacked the 2 people in front of it. The 2 immortal ascension boundary masters were shocked and panicked, their expressions becoming extremely ugly as they desperately tried to dodge. Do you think you can escape? Yangkai laughed towards the sky. Waving his hands, all the demonic Qi that flew out scattered to the sides and chased after the 2 immortal ascension boundary masters. Not only that, the white tiger and divine ox seals were also pushed out again. 2 jet black beast phantoms appeared, but instead of attacking the 2 immortal ascension boundary masters, they attacked the scattered young disciples. These 2 beast phantoms seemed to be much stronger than the previous 2. The 2 beast phantoms leapt forward and almost instantly arrived in front of a stunned soaring rainbow court disciple. This young disciple was only a separation and reunion boundary 8th stage cultivator, so before he could recover from his shock, he was directly dismembered by the 2 beast phantoms, not even having time to scream. Run, run, if this father can't kill you, then I'll kill all your disciples. Yangkai shouted ruthlessly. Hearing his shout, the young disciples were suddenly dumbfounded, a chill running down their spines. Despicable. The faces of the masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court changed dramatically as they cursed. Seeing the 2 beast phantoms rush towards another young disciple, the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters no longer dared to escape and simultaneously attacked the two beast phantoms, finally saving the young disciple. Not running anymore. Yang Kai had been waiting for this moment for a long time and sneered. A cluster of black light flew out from his body and once again transformed into a series of sharp attacks that shot towards the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters. The Masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were unable to escape. With attacks coming from all directions, they hurriedly pushed their Yuan Qi and each took out an artifact to protect themselves, but in the next moment they were wrapped in darkness. A series of rumbling sounds came from the darkness. Everyone's eyes stared nervously towards the direction of the darkness, not knowing what the fate of the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters would be. Hua. The darkness suddenly collapsed and two figures fell from mid-air, one after the other. Both of them looked distressed and were on the verge of collapse, seemingly having suffered heavy injuries. Not only that, but at this moment, both of their eyes were red and flashed with all kinds of evil light, their bodies wrapped in a faint black qi. This black light was the purest form of demonic qi, which contained the power condensed by Yang Kai, killing any ordinary person who came into contact with it. Yang Kai could ignore this demonic qi, but others could not. At this moment, the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters had been affected by the demonic qi, leading to the dark side of their hearts. If they could not resolve this demonic qi in time, sooner or later they would become the demon race and lose their minds. But how could it be so simple to get rid of this demonic qi? Even a master like Ling Taishu was affected by this demonic qi and was unable to resolve it, let alone these two from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. To some extent, the demonic qi possessed by Yang Kai was even purer than the demon lords. You're ruthless. The master from Thunderlight Sect glared at Yang Kai with resentment and muttered curses. I told you, the price of offending me is not something you can afford. Yang Kai coldly snorted, his expression cold. Chapter 358. This was Yang Kai's first battle after becoming the demon race. Although he had long known that in this state he was much stronger than in his normal state, the final result still surprised Yang Kai. Without using the power of the unyielding golden skeleton, with his current strength, at best he could fight an immortal Ascension Boundary second stage master to a draw. Now, however, he was completely suppressing them without even using his full strength. This kind of feeling of power was very pleasurable, but even though Yang Kai was enjoying it, he didn't lose himself. Asterisk from the ground, a series of attacks drilled through the earth like earthworms towards the masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. The two masters were frightened, their faces pale, and without even thinking about it, they hurriedly tried to escape. Yang Kai sneered, his mind moving at will, controlling the dark demonic qi around him and sending it into the sky, causing the two masters to become more and more distressed. Having learned their lesson, the two masters no longer dared to run away recklessly, stopping from time to jointly resist these attacks so as not to provoke Yang Kai into killing these young disciples who had no power to resist. However, these attacks were simply too numerous, and the two masters had been affected by the demonic qi before, so at this moment they couldn't exert their full strength, so in a moment of carelessness, they were both wrapped up by these serpent-like black qi. At the same time, a rich black demonic qi suddenly burst out from Yang Kai's body. A loud dragon roar resounded throughout the world. Everyone turned their heads towards the source of this sound and was immediately dumbstruck. What they saw was a huge dragon head appear above Yang Kai's head, one that was almost tangible. The two dragon horns on this head were extremely sharp, exuding a dark and cold light as its large eyes stared ruthlessly towards the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters in the sky. Being stared at by this pair of eyes, the masters from Thunderlight Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court immediately smelled the aura of death. The dragon head swayed back and forth, drawing out a large amount of demonic qi from Yang Kai's body, condensing it into a body that flew up into the sky. This was a black flood dragon. Full of evil and violence, its 200 or 300 meter long body gave off an inexplicable pressure. The flood dragon was the dragon-shaped tattoo on Yang Kai's back. It was formed by absorbing demonic energy. Yang Kai had a dragon tattoo, while Su Yang had an ice phoenix tattoo. This was supposed to be the tattoo of the art of yin-yang union of joy, but for some reason, it was able to manifest itself. Yang Kai only felt that his back was a little itchy, so he tried it casually. He didn't expect to succeed. Wherever the flood dragon passed, the snake-like black demon Qi followed closely behind, setting it off in the middle like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon. The experts of Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were tied up in the air, and were currently struggling to break free. Before they could escape, the huge dragon's mouth had already opened, and a mouthful of fangs could be faintly seen. With a crunch, the Immortal Ascension Boundary Cultivator from Thunder Light Sect was instantly bitten in half. Blood spurted out. The flood dragon calmly soared to a height of more than 300 meters. It then turned around and swooped down. Its two eyes were fixed on the experts of Soaring Rainbow Court. Seeing one of their companions die in front of them, and being bitten in half in a single bite at that, the Immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Soaring Rainbow Court was so scared that his soul almost left his body. Under the huge pressure, he almost didn't have the strength to move a finger. Suddenly, this man seemed to have found his saviors and shouted in a certain direction, "Old Man Fang, Old Man Shu. Help!" Yang Kai's expression became cold as he turned his head and saw two streaks of light rapidly approaching. They were Xiong Chu's two guardians. Both of them were Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage Masters, far stronger than the Masters from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. As they flew forward, they immediately launched attacks towards the Flood Dragon, causing Old Man Fang to angrily shout, "Who are you? How dare you hurt us?" Yang Kai coldly snorted and flew in front of the Soaring Rainbow Court Master, waving his hand and summoning the Azura sword. Zheng, countless sword cries rang out, accompanied by a wave of the Shura sword, and an earth-shattering amount of sword chi flew towards Fang Laro and Shu Laro to welcome their attacks. Hong, a series of violent shockwaves burst out mid-air and Yang Kai was pushed back a few steps, but he managed to block the other party's attack. The flood dragon swooped down from the sky, and when Old Man Fang and Old Man Shu were less than 500 meters away, it bit down on the head of the Soaring Rainbow Court Master, Catcher. The expert from Soaring Rainbow Court immediately turned into a headless corpse. Blood spurted out from his neck like a fountain, a spectacular sight. Fang Laro and Shu Laro could only watch all of this happen helplessly, but they were powerless to help. Suddenly, their eyes went bloodshot as they attacked without mercy. One of them transformed into a cloud of smoke while the other emitted a golden light, using all kinds of martial skills to attack Yang Kai. Yang Kai's expression became cold, no longer as calm as before. These two were both Immortal Ascension Boundary 7th Stage Masters, not something the two pieces of trash from before could compare to. Not bothering to hide his attacks, thousands of blood-red petals suddenly flew out, accompanied by a refreshing floral fragrance, each of these sharp petals transforming into a sharp attack. Sword waves raged as sword chi flew out, the white tiger and divine ox seals struck out one after another. The three of them had only fought for 10 breaths of time, but Yang Kai was already in a difficult situation. Even if he used 2 heaven-grade artifacts, he was unable to compete with them. Just as he was considering whether or not to retreat, 2 beautiful figures had already rushed over anxiously. Hu Jiao and Hu Mai. Both of their beautiful eyes were filled with anxiety, but after seeing that Yang Kai was unscathed, they couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. But when they saw Old Man Fang and Old Man Shu attacking Yang Kai, their faces filled with anger. Without any hesitation, the two of them joined forces and attacked one of them. The twin chi shared spirit divine art shone brilliantly at this moment. Both of them were only Yuan Chi 4th stage cultivators, but after pushing their secret art to its limit, their Yuan Chi was incomparably vigorous, not much worse than a peak Yuan Chi cultivator. Their dual swords were enough to compete with an ordinary Immortal Ascension Boundary Master. If Old Man Fang and Old Man Shu didn't care about the consequences, they could have easily taken them down, but these two were women that Xiong Chu liked, so they didn't dare act too presumptuously. For a moment, their hands and feet were tied, and their moves were sluggish, not daring to use too much strength. On the other hand, Yang Kai, with the help of the Hu sisters and the Flood Dragon, was more than enough to protect himself. 2 young ladies. Old Man Fang's expression became serious as he shouted, "This man is a demon." Hu Jiao shouted, "I don't know what a demon is, I only know that he is my friend." Two young ladies, quickly retreat, don't misunderstand others and end up harming yourself. Old Man Shu also tried to persuade them. If you want to kill him, you'll have to kill us as well. Hu Maya seemed to be more delicate than her elder sister, but at this moment, her voice was resolute and decisive. He has killed so many people from Soaring Rainbow Court and Thunder Light Sect, so he has fallen into the demonic path. He is no longer the person you know. Now, he has no consciousness, so he doesn't recognize you at all. Quickly get away from him, Old Man Fang said anxiously. Yang Kai grinned at him, and with a loud dragon roar, the black flood dragon viciously bit towards him. You overestimate yourself. Fang Laro roared angrily. The profound light in his hand turned and hit the flood dragon's head. The giant flood dragon was knocked back, but it didn't hurt him at all. However, Old Man Fang was also forced back a step as he stared in horror at the 200 to 300 meter long flood dragon, his heart filled with a bitter taste. Everyone, stop! An angry shout came from afar. Hearing this shout, Old Man Fang and Old Man Shu hesitated for a moment before glaring hatefully at Yang Kai before hurriedly jumping out of the battle. Hu Jiao and Hu Mai also hurried over to Yang Kai's side and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" Yang Kai slowly shook his head as he continued to stare forward. After killing so many people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court, his purpose had been achieved. Now that Yang Kai was protected by the Flood Dragon, even Old Man Fang and Old Man Shu couldn't stop him. The current Yang Kai was truly fearless. As far as the eye could see, Xiong Chu walked over with a heavy expression on his face. Even in such a situation, he still displayed the self-restraint and calmness that a young master from a great family should have. Looking at the blood and broken corpses on the ground, Xiong Chu's eyes showed a clear trace of pain. Shua Shua Shua. A large group of people appeared behind Xiong Chu. The people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall all looked around in amazement and quickly rushed over to Yang Kai's side. Guan Kai La's pair of old eyes narrowed as his heart trembled. When he saw the two corpses from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court, his eyes couldn't help trembling. In the field, the two sides were clearly divided. Except for the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall who stood on Yang Kai's side, everyone else stood on Xiong Chu's side. Old Man Fang and Old Man Shu also wore their Yuan Qi, vigilantly guarding against Yang Kai. Xiong Chu glanced at Yang Kai faintly and felt the murderous aura coming from his body. He couldn't help raising his brow, a look of surprise appearing on his face. Seeing the black flood dragon floating mid-air, his expression couldn't help but change. He could feel the powerful combat strength of this flood dragon, so naturally he had some greedy and possessive thoughts. However, this flood dragon was obviously formed from pure Yuan Qi, so Xiong Chu had no choice but to dispel these thoughts. Looking around, Xiong Chu's face filled with grief as he asked, "What happened?" Old Man Fang quickly explained, "Young master, when Old Man Shu and I rushed back, we saw this little brat become the demon race and kill Soaring Rainbow Court's Cheng Ming. These two old masters were incompetent and were unable to save Cheng Ming from his grasp. Cheng Ming is dead." Xiong Chu showed a trace of genuine surprise. "Yes." Old Man Fang nodded, pointing to a nearby corpse. "His head has been severed." "What about the Immortal Ascension Boundary Master from Thunder Light Sect?" Xiong Chu asked anxiously. "Before we arrived, he was already dead." Xiong Chu couldn't help feeling shocked. He had overestimated Yang Kai's combat strength as much as possible, but he had never imagined that his overestimation of Yang Kai's strength would prove to be far too low. Two Immortal Ascension Boundary Second Stage Masters had actually been killed by him. Just how strong was he? "Young master, that young man has become the demon race and doesn't even recognize his own family. Young master, please allow these two old masters to kill him and avenge Cheng Ming." Old Man Fang grit his teeth and said. Xiong Chu's brow furrowed, seemingly hesitating. Hu Jiao quickly interjected, "Old man, who said he became the demon race?" Chapter 359. Today, I'm going out to buy some New Year goods. It's almost the New Year, so everyone at home is quite busy, so I have to help. Hu Jiao had always been more domineering than her younger sister. Normally, when she met Fang Lao, she would respectfully address him as senior, but at this moment, seeing him actually want to kill Yang Kai, she couldn't help but curse him. Fang Lao's face was livid with anger, but due to the identity of this woman, he couldn't act on the spot, so he just calmly said, with his current appearance, "Don't tell me he hasn't become the demon race." Hu Jiao sneered, "If he had become the demon race, would we still be able to stand safely by his side? Are you blind?" Fang Lao and Shu Lao both froze at the same time, thinking about it for a moment and also feeling a little confused. Yang Kai's current state was completely beyond their scope of understanding. Under the influence of that kind of murderous aura, it was impossible for him to have any semblance of sanity. But looking at his eyes, they were clearly calm and steady, without the slightest trace of malevolence that should have become the demon race. Besides, you only saw him kill Cheng Ming. Have you ever thought about what that old man did to him? Hu Jiao asked. Fang Lao's mouth twitched for a moment before he finally said, "This old man only believes what he sees." Hu Jiao sneered again and again. Half a month ago, Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court suffered a big loss at his hands, and today, they left the front line ahead of time and returned here. I think you can guess what their purpose is. Even if Yang Kai really killed them, it was out of self-defense. These people who died can only blame themselves. What does it have to do with him? Is it possible that when someone comes to kill you, you have to stretch out your neck for them to cut off? You're not allowed to resist. Guan Kaila also nodded. Young lady is right. Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court not only disobeyed orders, but also returned here ahead of time and attempted to kill fellow Taoists. I ask young Lord Xiong to uphold justice. I ask young Lord Xiong to uphold justice. Fang Ziqi's mouth curled into a smile. He also raised his voice and shouted. Xiong Chu smiled lightly and said, "If this is really the case, then this Xiong will naturally not shirk his responsibility and will severely punish the people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court as a warning to other." Pausing for a moment, Xiong Chu continued, "But this is only your guess. You came back with me, so this Xiong didn't see how things developed. Naturally, you didn't see it. How about this? Let the two parties involved in the conflict tell us what happened. What do you think?" "I have no objection." Yang Kai chuckled. "It's good that this friend understands." Xiong Chu nodded, turning his head and saying, "Old man Fang, old man Shu, bring those who are still alive here." "Yes." The two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters flew out. Not long after, all the survivors were brought back. Many of these people were seriously injured. Falling to the ground, Xie Rong and Li Fu were not in such a sorry state, but their bodies could not help but sway. She stole a glance at Yang Kai. The two of them retracted their gazes in panic. The other young disciples didn't even dare to look at Yang Kai. The battle just now had scared them out of their wits. Even their own elders had been killed by Yang Kai in a single blow. How could these young people have the ability to resist? Xie Rong. Li Fu. Xiong Chu called out softly. "Yes, yes, yes." Xie Rong was trembling like a sieve, replying quite stutteringly while Li Fu could only mutter a soft yen. Xiong Chu's brow furrowed slightly before he suddenly asked, "You two should have seen everything just now, right?" "Yes, yes." "Then tell the truth, no matter how big or small, if there is even the slightest bit of falsehood or concealment, you know the consequences." Xiong Chu chuckled. Xie Rong and Li Fu glanced at each other, neither of them daring to speak. Hu Jiao sneered, "A guilty conscience." Xiong Chu rubbed his forehead and smiled bitterly. "Jiao, before the matter is settled, don't say such things." Hu Jiao coldly snorted, "Young Lord Xiong, I don't want to remind you again, please don't call me that, okay?" "My apologies, my tongue slipped." Xiong Chu didn't show the slightest embarrassment and cupped his fists repeatedly before turning to Xie Rong and Li Fu and saying, "If you don't dare speak, then this young lord will consider you guilty and kill you right now." Xie Rong and Li Fu couldn't help trembling as they stared at Xiong Chu in horror. Xiong Chu then continued, "But if you have any grievances, this young lord can also uphold justice for you." Hearing this sentence, Everyone from Storm Hall and Blood Battle Gang couldn't help but frown. Seong Chu's words didn't sound like there was anything wrong with them, but after carefully pondering over them, they actually had a profound meaning. Sure enough, Xie Rong and Li Fu glanced at each other and their panicked emotions gradually stabilized, as if they had found a backer. Li Fu nodded. Xie Rong, you speak. Xie Rong swallowed hard, grit his teeth, and nodded, good. Taking a deep breath, not daring to look at Yang Kai, Xie Rong said in a low and sorrowful voice, today, our two sects were fighting on Taifang Mountain and chased down a group of ash-grey cloud evil land cultivator. After killing them, we discovered that we were not far from the camp, so instead of meeting up with young Lord Xiong, we simply returned directly. Nonsense. Hu Jiao couldn't help but shout, since the beginning of the battle, I haven't seen any of you. How could you have chased down a group of ash-grey cloud evil land cultivator? It was clearly premeditated and you simply returned directly. We didn't. Young Lord Xiong, everything I said is true. If you don't believe me, you can go to the western foot of the mountain and investigate. There should still be some corpses left there. Xiong Chu nodded slightly. I'll investigate. For now, I'll just assume you chased after the enemy, but not being able to return in time is also the fault of your two sects. I'll punish you severely for this. Do you have any complaints? No. Xie Rong and Li Fu shook their heads at the same time. The Hu sisters were so angry that their chests heaved up and down. Xiong Chu seemed to have handled this matter well, but for him to so casually dismiss it, it was obvious he was siding with the people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court. Continue. Xiong Chu motioned. After we returned here with our respective elders, we were preparing to wait for young Lord Xiong's return before reporting, but while we were resting, we suddenly felt a towering evil aura. A towering evil aura? Xiong Chu raised his brow. Yen, we have never felt this kind of evil aura before. The elders of our two sects thought it was some kind of powerful demon and led us to meet it. However, when we followed this aura to its source, we were shocked to discover that this demon was actually what? It was actually that person. Which person? Xiong Chu asked. The person the Hu sisters brought back a few days ago. Xie Rong grit his teeth and replied in a deep voice. Xiong Chu glanced over at Yang Kai, only to see the latter smile back at him. Yang Kai's smile was flat and his expression was calm, causing Xiong Chu to be stunned. And then? Xiong Chu turned his eyes and asked. Then, that person attacked us like a madman. The elders of our two sects were unable to stop him and countless disciples were killed or injured. In the end, two elders sacrificed their lives. Only then were we able to save our lives. Xie Rong paused for a moment before pounding his chest and stamping his feet in grief. I ask young Lord Xiong to seek justice for our two sects and avenge our dead brothers, sisters, and elder. Li Fu also burst into tears, wiping the corners of her eyes. Choking with sobs, she said, I ask young Lord Xiong to seek justice. If I do not avenge this grievance, I am not a man. Listening to their pleas, the people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall gnashed their teeth in anger. Their hearts were filled with hatred. Xiong Chu was silent for a moment before saying, Get up. If young Lord Xiong cannot seek justice for us and kill that demon, we will never kneel again. We will kneel and never get up. Xie Rong and Li Fu kowtowed. Xiong Chu showed a displeased expression and said, The situation is not clear yet, these are only your side's words. If you wish to kneel, then kneel here. Xiong Chu raised his eyes. Looking at Yang Kai with a smile, he said, This friend, what do you want to say? This Xiong is not the kind of person who cannot distinguish between black and white. If you have something to say, this Xiong is willing to listen. The Hu sisters immediately turned to look at Yang Kai nervously. Yang Kai shrugged and said indifferently, No. Yang Kai. Hu Jiao's beautiful face suddenly paled as she nervously grabbed his arm. Xiong Chu was also quite surprised and stared at him in surprise, seemingly not having expected him to not defend himself. Looking at his calm expression, Xiong Chu faintly felt a bad premonition. Daring to not defend himself, and not showing any signs of nervousness, obviously he was not afraid of anything happening to him. Was this person arrogant or confident? Yang Kai, say a few words, they are slandering you, how can you not say anything? Humaira also became anxious. Yang Kai smiled faintly, if you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. The Hu sisters' expression froze for a moment before they suddenly remembered that even if Yang Kai tried to defend himself, it would be useless. His current state was enough for everyone here to classify him as an evil demon. Now that everyone was at war with the ash-grey cloud evil land, what did the appearance of an evil demon here mean? Anyone could kill him, so even if it was Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court who attacked first, Yang Kai wouldn't be able to justify himself. Defending himself would only be a waste of saliva. His face gradually sinking, Yang Kai sneered, whether I am a human or a demon, it is not up to outsiders to judge. Xiong Chu's eyes couldn't help narrowing as he stared at Yang Kai. After a long time, he finally said, does this friend mean that this Xiong is not qualified to judge you? Are you worthy? Yang Kai looked at him indifferently. Impudence. Fang Laro angrily shouted, the Xiong family is a first-class family, and the young lord is the one in charge of this place. Who do you think you are to dare speak to the young lord in such a manner? A first-class family, what great prestige. Yang Kai laughed. Today, this young lord will let you see the prestige of a first-class family. Xiong Chu was also angered by Yang Kai's words and coldly snorted, Fang Lao, Shu Lao, capture this evil demon. Yes. The two immortal ascension boundary masters immediately responded. You dare. The Hu sisters immediately stepped forward, their delicate bodies blocking in front of Yang Kai. Xiong Chu's expression sank as his eyes flashed a gloomy light, taking a deep breath and saying, two young ladies, if you don't want to be hurt, stand back. If you insist on remaining stubborn, this young lord will be able to accuse your two families of colluding with evil demons and arrest you as well. What a big hat. Guan Kai stepped forward and sneered, young Lord Xiong, is this how your Xiong family handles matters? Xiong Chu's expression became gloomy, this is how I, Xiong Chu, handle things. If evil demons are not dealt with, people will not be at ease. Chapter 360. The people from Thunder Light Sect and Soaring Rainbow Court were originally in a miserable state, but when they heard this, they immediately cheered up. Xie Rong and Li Fu also stared at Yang Kai with a smug and hateful expression, as if they could already see him at the end of his road. Well said. A burst of laughter came from not far away. Everyone was shocked and quickly turned their heads to look in that direction. 100 zhong away, a few cloud-treading foals were galloping towards them like the wind, their feet not touching the ground. Cloud-treading colts, third-order monster beast. Although they weren't very strong, they had great endurance and speed. On top of that, their temperament was docile, making them the most suitable mounts. Each cloud-treading colt could travel a few thousand kilometers in a day, and a good one could easily travel 10,000 kilometers in a day. This kind of speed was even faster than some immortal ascension boundary masters and didn't require Yuan Qi to fly. Therefore, the great families would generally domesticate cloud-treading colts as a means of transportation. However, this kind of monster beast was very rare and each one was worth hundreds of thousands of silvers. Apart from first-class forces, no other force could afford to raise one. To some extent, cloud-treading colts represented strength and identity. 3 cloud-treading colts had arrived. The leader of this group looked about the same age as Xiong Chu and was also quite handsome. Behind him were 2 immortal ascension boundary 7th or 8th stage masters. The distance of 1,000 meters was covered in an instant. After not seeing you for a few months, Brother Xiong's temper seems to have grown. The leading young man laughed. Arriving in front of everyone, this young man didn't dismount and instead just sat atop his cloud-treading colt, looking down at everyone. However, when that pair of eyes looked towards Yang Kai, there was a slightly dignified and surprised look in them. This kind of demonic aura was something he naturally couldn't ignore. The 2 immortal ascension boundary masters behind him also frequently glanced at Yang Kai. Secretly circulating their Yuan Qi, they prepared themselves for the unexpected. This guy is called Nan Sheng. Fang Ziki knew that Yang Kai was somewhat ignorant and quickly explained, he is the young lord of the first-class Nan family, his status is equal to Xiong Chu. The Nan family and the Seong family had been married for several generations, so the relationship between the two families had always been very good. Be careful of him, he's much more overbearing than Seong Chu, and he's also very difficult to deal with. Yes. Yang Kai nodded slightly. Seong Chu should be the kind of insidious person who would say one thing on the surface and another behind his back, while this Nan Sheng should be a straightforward person. Seong Chu's livid expression finally eased a lot when he saw this person, smiling as he cupped his fists and said, "Big brother Nan. Why are you here? Weren't you on the battlefront a few 100 miles away?" The Seong clan was in charge of Tai Fang Mountains battlefront, while the Nan clan was in charge of another battlefront a few 100 li away. They were both first-class families, so they both had the qualifications to do so. Nan Sheng grinned. He jumped off the cloud-treading mare and said, "Didn't the final battle end 2 days ago? The central capital's 8 great families said that we can go back now. When we passed by here, we felt an unusual aura, so we came over to take a look. I didn't expect there to be such a good show. Why haven't you left yet?" While speaking, Nan Sheng swept his eyes over Yang Kai. Seong Chu's expression became slightly awkward as he said, "Today was the last day of our mission. I wanted to tell everyone the good news after returning, but something unexpected happened here, so I didn't have time to tell everyone." The people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall were all startled. The final battle had ended 2 days ago. If they hadn't inadvertently overheard this from Nan Sheng, they would likely still be in the dark. How could the Ash-Grey Cloud Evil Lands cultivator attack their camp 2 days after the final battle? What kind of commander would do such a thing? However, at this critical moment, Yang Kai's camp had encountered a problem. There was clearly something fishy going on here. In an instant, everyone understood many key points. An accident. Nan Sheng nodded slightly, frowning as he stared towards Yang Kai, casually pointing towards him. "Is it him?" "En." Seong Chu nodded. "Demon Lord, heh, interesting." Nan Sheng pinched his chin with one hand as he stared at Yang Kai like he was sizing up a commodity. Such a young demon actually has such a rich evil chi. It seems the secret art he cultivates is not simple. "It's not simple," Seong Chu said solemnly. Nan Sheng was slightly stunned. He had rarely seen Seong Chu so dignified, so he couldn't help asking curiously, "What's wrong?" 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Second Stage Masters were killed by him. "What?" Nan Sheng paled. The 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind him were also shocked. "Brother Seong, you're not joking, right?" Nan Sheng froze for a moment before shaking his head and smiling bitterly, his face filled with disbelief. He seems to only be a Yuan Qi Boundary 6th-stage cultivator. How could he possibly kill 2 Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters? "The corpses are right here. How could I be joking with you? All the corpses here were his handiwork." Seong Chu smiled bitterly. One of the Immortal Ascension Boundary Masters behind Nan Sheng also stepped forward and whispered, "Young Master, this person cannot be underestimated. His vitality is extremely strong, and that black dragon beside him is also very strange." Seeing his family's Immortal Ascension Boundary Master act so solemnly, Nan Sheng quickly put away his frivolous expression and asked softly, "If I were to face him, what are my chances of winning?" The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master pursed his lips, not knowing what to say. "Tell me the truth." "No chance of winning." The Immortal Ascension Boundary Master braced himself and said. Nan Sheng sucked in a cold breath and finally re-examined Yang Kai. Even against the younger generation of the central capital's 8 great families, there were only a few people who could give him no chance of winning, but now there was a young demon lord with such attainments. Didn't that mean his aptitude and strength were extraordinary? How could he compare to the central capital's 8 great masters? Narrowing his eyes slightly, Nan Sheng quickly said, "Such a dangerous person, we should just kill him. Leaving him alive will only cause us endless trouble in the future." Seong Chu nodded. "I also think so." "Then what are you hesitating for?" Nan Sheng asked, puzzled. Seong Chu smiled wryly. Nan Sheng glanced at his expression, then turned his head and asked, "Are these people trying to interfere?" "Ha, I'm not doing my job properly." Seong Chu nodded helplessly. "Who dares interfere? Kill them all." Nan Sheng coldly snorted. daring to ally with this demon lord at this time. Even if we kill them all, no one will dare say anything. The people from Blood Battle Gang and Storm Hall all paled. All of them stared vigilantly at Nan Sheng. Originally, the two immortal Ascension Boundary Masters on Xiongchu's side were more than enough to wipe them out, but now Nan Sheng had brought two more masters with him. If they really fought, no one here would survive. Brother Xiong, are you still going to show mercy at this time? Nan Sheng tilted his head towards Xiongchu, a sneer forming on his face. Xiongchu smiled wryly. There are some people I can't bear to kill. As he spoke, he looked towards the Hu sisters with a burning gaze. His eyes were filled with undisguised affection. The Xiong and Nan families had been allied through marriage for several generations. Xiongchu and Nan Sheng had played together since childhood and were as close as brothers. How could Nan Sheng not know what Xiongchu was thinking? Nan Sheng also knew Xiongchu's personality and methods. Thinking about it for a moment, Nan Sheng understood a lot of things. There were some things that were inconvenient for Xiongchu to say, but Nan Sheng could. However, just passing by, he actually wanted to help this little brat. This little brat had several wives at home. Yet he still wasn't satisfied. Nan Sheng felt a burst of depression in his heart. However, this pair of twins was quite interesting. No wonder he was tempted. Thinking so, Nan Sheng didn't try to stay out of this matter, casually pointing to the Hu sisters and asking, "Two girls, do you want to die or live?" Hu Jiao sneered, "If you can live, who would want to die? Good. Come out, this matter has nothing to do with you. Brother Xiong only wants to kill that little brat." Nan Sheng nodded slightly and immediately made the decision. The Hu sisters shook their heads and stood firmly beside Yang Kai. Nan Sheng was stunned and couldn't help cursing in his heart. The two women that bastard Xiongchu liked already had sweethearts. No wonder it was so difficult to deal with. So that's how it is. At this moment, Nan Sheng understood everything. It turned out that the real deal was hidden here. Straightening his face, Nan Sheng asked, "Do you want to save his life?" The Hu sisters' faces were filled with displeasure, but after a long time, they nodded slightly. "That's even better." Nan Sheng laughed. "You too, marry my brother Xiong and I, Nan Sheng, will protect his life for you." As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Xiongchu waved his hand again and again. "Big brother Nan, this won't do. I am indeed interested in these two girls, but killing a demon is a big matter. How can we mix it up?" Nan Sheng's expression became serious as he said, "Why not? You can decide things here, and I can decide things for you. Let's do as you say." Turning his face, he looked at the Hu sisters and asked, "What do the two girls think?" Wishful thinking. Hu Jiao quickly and decisively refused. Nan Sheng's face sank, a trace of arrogance and disdain flashing across his eyes as he said, "You two seem to be just disciples of second-class sects, right? My brother Xiong comes from a first-class family, he has both power and influence, and he is also handsome. Do you think marrying him would be wrong for you too? You're just two trivial women, what's the point of pretending to be virtuous? Sooner or later you'll have to marry. If you don't want to marry a first-class family's young lord, who do you want to marry? My brother Xiong taking a fancy to you is your luck." Hearing Nan Sheng's harsh words, the Hu sisters were immediately enraged. "So be it, either he dies, or you two marry my brother Xiong and I will protect his life. As for which choice to make, you decide for yourself." Nan Sheng was extremely overbearing and did not give the Hu sisters any room to maneuver, sneering as he said, "You only have a stick of incense worth of time. When the time is up, even if you beg me, it will be useless. If anyone else dares to interfere and cause trouble, they will all be killed without mercy." Finished speaking, Nan Sheng lowered his head and stood aside, watching coldly. From the beginning to the end, Xiongchu had only said one sentence, and after that, there was no further movement. Now that things had developed to this point, even if the Hu sisters were stupid, they would still be able to understand. "So, your purpose was this." Hu Jiao looked at Xiongchu contemptuously. "Everything you did was to target Yang Kai, and then wait for an opportunity to blackmail us, right?" Xiongchu's expression remained indifferent as he said, "Jiao, if you think so, then you've misunderstood me." Nan Sheng couldn't help but roll his eyes. thinking that this bastard was still so pretentious. If it were him, he would have already forced himself on her. A woman from a second-class sect, so what if he did? What could he do? Misunderstanding or not, you know clearly in your heart. Hu Jiao sneered. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.